I woke up in a cramped, tiled room, gasping for air. My face was drenched in sweat, and my heart hammered against my ribs like I had just escaped a nightmare. Xiao Fan. A gentle voice drifted into my ears. I looked up and saw a woman in her 40s standing over me. Her skin was still fair, but time had carved deep lines of exhaustion into her face. Standing next to her was a girl who looked about 16, radiating youth and energy. She wore a simple t-shirt and light blue jeans, looking graceful and tall. "Brother, it's okay," the girl said, trying to comfort me. "You're so smart. Even if you only awakened a common talent, you're destined to succeed." Suddenly, a flood of memories crashed into my mind. I realized I had traveled to another world. The body I now occupied belonged to a boy named Chen Fan. The older woman was my mother, Chen Yu, and the girl was my sister, Chen Shui. I let out a long breath, and my eyes sharpened. I hadn't expected to live a second life. In my previous world, I was also named Chen Fan, but I had been bedridden with a terminal illness. My final memories were of a cold, solemn hospital room and the sound of my parents sobbing. I thought death was the end, but instead, I woke up here with a healthy, functioning body. A sharp sting hit my brain as more information surged in. In this world, the original Chen Fan was a high school senior. He was a straight-A student, the top of his class, a true genius by academic standards. In a normal world, he would have been respected and destined for greatness. But this wasn't a normal world. Here, grades didn't mean much. If you were just good at books, you'd end up as a minor official with a dead-end future. This era belonged to martial artists. Powerful martial artists held supreme authority. They were the stars everyone chased, the ones who held the power of life and death in their hands. Everything depended on your awakened talent. From my new memories, I knew these talents were ranked: common, excellent, elite, extraordinary, saint, and god level. Every person got one chance to awaken their talent when they reached adulthood. The higher your talent, the higher your ceiling. I had been unlucky. Everyone expected me to awaken something incredible because I was a top student with a high IQ. People thought high intelligence led to powerful talents. Instead, I had disappointed everyone. I had awakened the lowest tier, a common level fire talent. Common talent meant it was nearly impossible to become a true martial artist. I was currently at the early stage of a martial apprentice, a level almost everyone reaches. There are 10 stages to being an apprentice, and for someone with my talent, the 10th stage was likely the end of the road. Beyond that were ranks I could only dream of: martial artist, master, grandmaster, general, marquis, and king. Above even the kings were the venerables. I had only seen people like that on TV. They were like living gods, capable of killing massive waves of beasts with a single wave of their hand. They were the pillars of the Dragon Kingdom. This world was dangerous. Ferocious beasts had invaded human territory, wiping out half of our lands. It was only through the sacrifice of our ancestors, who built massive walls and awakened their talents, that humanity survived. But the beasts were endless. They were always looking for a way to break through. Every martial artist had a duty to fight. If you didn't get strong, you died. Statistics showed that 70% of new martial artists died during their first mission on the front lines. But no one could retreat. If we stopped fighting, the walls would fall, and our families would be torn to pieces. The only way to delay the front lines was to have high talent. Those with potential were given time to grow. There was a martial artist exam coming up. If I failed, I'd be sent straight to the front as cannon fodder. If I passed, I'd get resources and a chance to join one of the 10 great academies. Those academies were the Ivy Leagues of this world. They produced venerables. Joining one meant your family could move to the elite district, the safest place behind the walls. I lived in the civilian district, right near the edge. If the walls broke, we were the first to die. I remembered seeing a giant bird beast tear through the sky once, swallowing hundreds of people in seconds before a powerhouse arrived to kill it. With my common talent, I was basically looking at a death sentence. The exam was only a month away. If I couldn't pass, I'd be dead shortly after. What was the point of being reborn just to die again? Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed in my head. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have successfully awakened the God-level system. The mechanical voice echoed in my mind like a robot whispering directly into my ear. It told me everything I needed to know. From now on, I didn't need to struggle or slave away. All I had to do was bask in the sun to become stronger. Brother, why are you just staring into space? I snapped out of it. My younger sister, Chen Shui, was looking at me with concern. She was young, but she was already growing into a beautiful girl with long, slender legs. She looked worried, and I couldn't blame her. My parents were just as anxious. Ever since I'd come home from my talent assessment 3 days ago, I hadn't touched a book. I hadn't eaten. I just locked myself in my room, staring at the walls. It's okay, Xiao Fan, my mother said softly. She was in her 40s, but you could still see traces of the beauty she was in her youth. Even if you don't have martial arts talent, you're brilliant at your studies. There are other paths. I've heard that the special departments look for top students. If you work for them, you might not even have to go to the front lines to fight those beasts. She was trying to give me hope. She knew that being labeled as common talent was a massive blow to someone like me. I was a genius student with my own pride, and everyone feared I might actually lose my mind from the shock. But they didn't understand. I wasn't depressed anymore. I was ecstatic. The system was my golden finger. It was the capital I needed to stand at the top of the world. Who cared about common talent when I had this? Mom, Xiao Shui, don't worry, I said, a genuine smile breaking across my face. I understand everything now. That's good, my mother sighed in relief. You haven't eaten in days. There's warm porridge outside. I'll go get it. Chen Shui walked out, her footsteps fading down the hall. A moment later, she returned with a steaming bowl of pork and preserved egg porridge. Following her was a man with a black beard wearing casual black clothes. He smelled faintly of cigarettes. This was my father, Chen Liyuan. It's good that you've thought it through, my father said, trying to sound cheerful. He wasn't a man of many words and didn't really know how to comfort people. Even if you can't be a high-level martial artist, it's not the end of the world. You go to the front, do your time, and come back. You can still live a decent life. My mother glared at him. If you don't have anything helpful to say, just keep quiet and get out of here. My father shrugged helplessly and walked out. It was clear who held the power in our household. I finished the bowl of porridge in record time, feeling the energy returning to my limbs. Mom, I want another bowl, I said, handing her the empty dish. She beamed. Seeing me eat was the best news she'd had all week. She hurried back to the kitchen, convinced I was just starving. Brother, Chen Shui said, standing up. Talent isn't everything. Even people with common talent can become great martial artists if they work hard enough. I looked at her. She still thought I was just putting on a brave face. I know, Xiao Shui. I really do. Asterisk ding. Congratulations, host. You have received a newbie gift pack. Asterisk. The system voice rang in my head again. Open it, I thought. Asterisk ding. Congratulations. You have obtained the solar god body. Asterisk. The system explained that this was a legendary constitution capable of absorbing solar flames. It allowed me to control all fires and incinerate any enemy. It wasn't just a god-level talent. It was classified as a god-king-level talent. I almost laughed out loud. In this world, god level was the peak. I had just surpassed the peak. All my problems were suddenly solved. My mother brought the second bowl of porridge, and I wolfed it down. I felt full of life. I put on my slippers and walked straight to the balcony. The golden afternoon sun was spilling across the floor. I grabbed a small stool, sat down, and let the warmth hit my skin. Ding. Energy plus 10. Energy plus 10. Asterisk. A wave of pleasure washed over me. With the solar god body, the sunlight didn't just feel warm. It felt like it was being inhaled by my pores, transforming into pure, concentrated power inside my chest. I closed my eyes. A faint mist of white steam began to rise from my skin, as if I had just stepped out of a sauna. My muscles were burning, shifting, and strengthening. I opened my internal status panel. Asterisk host, Chin Fan. Realm, Martial Apprentice, First Stage. Martial Arts, Rolling Stone Punch. Energy value, 100, increasing. Asterisk. Could I level up with just 100 energy? I didn't hesitate. I clicked Upgrade. My cells screamed with activity. My blood surged, and my aura exploded. My physical strength didn't just grow, it multiplied. Martial Apprentice, 4th Stage. I had jumped 3 minor realms in a single heartbeat. A first-stage apprentice usually has about 100 pounds of force. But now, I felt like I could lift a ton. My strength had increased at least 30-fold. I gripped my fist, feeling the raw power vibrating in my muscles. I didn't dare test it here. If I punched the wall, the whole apartment might collapse. I felt reborn. My senses were sharper, my vision so clear I could see people moving blocks away. Martial arts really was the only way to live in this era. I went to the bathroom, washed off the sweat, changed into dry clothes, and headed right back to the balcony to soak up more sun. My parents watched me from the hallway, looking completely baffled. They thought I'd finally snapped out of my funk and would get back to my books. Instead, I was just sitting there like a lizard on a rock. Has he just given up on himself? Chen Shui whispered. To them, I looked lazy. To me, I was becoming a god. There was no other way to explain my behavior. Before this, I was a total shut-in. Other guys stayed home to play games, but I stayed home to study. I barely ever saw the sun, let alone spent hours lounging on the balcony. My father sighed, a flicker of worry crossing his face. Maybe it's for the best, he muttered. There are other paths in life besides fighting. He knew the cost of war. He had fought beasts on the front lines when he was young. It was a suicide mission for most, and he was one of the lucky few who had escaped with his life to start a family. Now his only hope was that I would come back from the mandatory service alive. My mother's eyes were filled with even more dread. She couldn't stand the thought of me dying on some distant battlefield. They both walked over to me on the balcony. Xiao Fan, my mother said softly. The assessment is only a month away. Even if you've stopped studying, you need to practice your martial arts. The front lines are too dangerous. If she had a choice, she would never let me go. But in this era, there was no choice. Everyone had to face the beasts eventually. It was just a matter of time. She's right, my father added, nodding. You need strength to survive. I just want you to come home safe. I looked at them, and a wave of warmth washed over me. They reminded me so much of my parents from my previous life. The original owner of this body was likely gone, his spirit broken by the pressure of this world. I was the one in control now, and that meant I inherited his responsibilities too. Dad, Mom, don't worry, I said, my voice steady and confident. I'll be fine, and I won't be heading to the front lines next month. I'm going to pass the martial artist assessment. I felt the energy inside me continuing to climb, nearing the 200 mark. Are you really okay? My mother asked, still unconvinced. I'm great, I said, feigning a bit of the original Chun fans' impatience. Just let me soak up some sun. They finally left me alone. I waited until they were gone, then focused inward. Breakthrough. 200 energy points vanished instantly. My realm jumped again, 2 stages at once. In just half a day, I had broken through 5 minor realms. If word of this got out, people would lose their minds. Even a god-tier talent couldn't move this fast. My blood surged. My muscles felt like they were glowing hot, and my body felt more refined, more optimized. My breathing fell into a strange, rhythmic pattern. I felt like there was a furnace burning in my chest. My strength multiplied again, and my muscles became lean and defined. I checked my status panel. Host, Chin Fan. Realm, Martial Apprentice, 6th stage. Strength, 5,000 pounds. Martial Arts, Rolling Stone Punch. Energy value, 0, increasing. 5,000 pounds of force. I felt invincible, though I knew it was partly an illusion from the sudden power spike. Still, I was already stronger than a 10th stage apprentice. Most people needed to reach the peak of the apprentice level just to hit 5,000 pounds. I had shattered the rules. The solar god body was terrifying. I focused my mind, and a flicker of golden flame danced across my palm, radiating intense heat. I wasn't just stronger, I could control the elements. I stretched and went back to being a lizard. Time flew by, and soon the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. By the time the light faded, I had collected 300 more energy points. Martial Apprentice, 6th stage, ready for breakthrough. I could feel that the actual martial artist realm was a whole different world. I wouldn't hit it today without the sun, but I could get close. I needed to test this power. I walked into the living room and grabbed my sneakers. Mom, a classmate invited me for dinner. I'm heading out. I called out, making up a quick excuse. Don't stay out too late, she shouted back from the kitchen. I slipped out and headed for a nearby park. It was dinner time, so the place was deserted. I found a quiet spot and sat down. Breakthrough. The 300 points disappeared. My body temperature skyrocketed. Steam began to rise from my skin like I was a cooked shrimp. My muscles vibrated as a hot current washed through my limbs, scouring my veins and strengthening my bones. I opened my eyes, a sharp light gleaming in my pupils. 8th stage. My strength had hit 8,000 pounds. I was inches away from being a true martial artist, yet I still had 2 more stages of potential to unlock. I threw a casual punch into the empty air. Boom. A sonic crack echoed through the trees. I had literally punched the air into submission. Mission triggered. Take first place in the martial artist assessment. Reward, double energy gain from sunlight. The system's voice was cold, but it made me smile. First place? That was already mine. I needed a real target to test 8,000 pounds of force. The best place for that was outside the city walls. I moved like a shadow, my body light as a feather, heading toward the gates. Leaving the city of Xingqing was easy. Nobody stopped me. Everyone knew the wasteland outside was crawling with beasts. If you went out there without strength, you were just choosing a creative way to commit suicide. The sky was dark now, and a cold wind howled through the trees as I entered a dense forest. It was silent, save for the rustle of leaves. Then I heard it. A low growl from the shadows. The rustle of leaves snapped me out of my thoughts. I stopped dead in my tracks, squinting into the dense thicket ahead. The shadows shifted, and a moment later, a massive black wolf stepped out. It was the size of a small calf, its fur matted and dark. Its eyes glowed a sickly crimson, fixed entirely on me, while strings of translucent saliva dripped from its snapping jaws. This was a ferocious beast. Outside the safety of the city walls, almost every animal had mutated into these monsters. I didn't flinch. I remained perfectly calm, staring back at the creature. It was only a level 1 beast, the equivalent of a 5th stage martial apprentice. Since I hadn't wandered too far from the city gates yet, I wasn't surprised to run into something so weak. The wolf clearly saw me as an easy dinner. It let out a guttural roar and lunged, vanishing into a blur of black fur. A stench of rotting meat hit my nose as it flew through the air. I didn't dodge. I didn't even blink. I simply wound up and threw a heavy punch straight forward. Crack. The impact was sickeningly loud. My fist collided with the wolf's skull, and the sheer force caused its head to explode like a dropped melon. The headless carcass tumbled to the ground, twitching once before going still. I looked down at my hand, now splattered with dark, warm blood. Most people would have been terrified after their first kill, but my heart rate didn't even speed up. The textbooks always described these beasts as terrifying nightmares, but standing over the body, I realized something. In the face of absolute power, they were nothing more than ants. I pulled out a tissue and casually wiped the blood off my knuckles, a small smile tugging at my lips. Beasts are nothing special, I thought. Of course, I knew this was just a low-level scavenger. I wasn't at the front lines yet. I realized I'd used too much strength. Maybe only half of that punch would have been enough to finish it. Still, I was satisfied. I hadn't even used a martial technique yet. That was pure, raw physical power. Suddenly, my phone started buzzing in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw the name on the screen, Zhao Heng. He was my best friend, my seatmate at school, and basically my brother. Back in the day, we were known as the twin swords of the internet cafe, the duo that everyone in the gaming rift feared to meet. I hit the green button. Lin Yuan, you doing okay lately? Zhao Heng's voice was full of genuine concern. I'm fine, I said calmly. You sound like you're in a good mood. Glad you finally cleared your head, he chirped. Where are you? Want to hit the cafe? Tonight, young Master Zhao is buying. We're just one short for a full team. Not going, I replied instantly. My friend's mind was always in the clouds. Fine, suit yourself. Just glad you're not depressed. I'm heading into the rift now. Call me if you need anything. But he hung up before I could even say another word. While I was out in the woods, things were tense back at school. In the principal's office, the air was thick with disappointment. It's just an elite-level wind talent, the principal said, sighing as he sipped his tea. The surrounding teachers lowered their heads, looking ashamed. Our high school number 1 was famous for being the best in the area, but this year, all the top-tier talents had been snatched up by high school number 3. I had such high hopes for Lin Yuan, my homeroom teacher said, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. His grades were so good. I thought for sure he'd awaken a top-tier talent and become transcendent. But a common fire talent? What a waste. The other teachers nodded sympathetically. In this world, people believed that better students had better comprehension, which usually led to better talents. My result was a bitter pill for them to swallow. Enough talk, the principal barked. Next year, we need to expand our recruitment. We have to find a top-tier genius. Principal, a female teacher asked. I heard the frontrunner for the martial artist assessment is a student from number 3. They say he awakened an elite-level extreme frost talent and might reach the late stages of a martial apprentice before the exam even starts. Is that true? The principal gave a bitter laugh. Number 3 got lucky. That kid has the potential to become a great grandmaster. The room went silent. A great grandmaster? That kind of talent meant more resources and more prestige. In this world, strength was everything. Even among elite talents, there were levels, and extreme frost was at the very top, almost reaching the transcendent grade. Our school had only stayed on top because 15 years ago, a student with a lightning talent joined a top academy and became a great grandmaster. We were desperate for a repeat. I didn't care about their gossip. I was busy focused on my own growth. I decided to practice the F-grade technique, Rolling Stone Punch. Usually, F-grade was for martial apprentices, and I should have been looking for level 1 techniques. But as a commoner, I couldn't get my hands on the high-level stuff until after the official assessment. I sat down and began to circulate my energy. With my solar body and my natural intelligence, the technique felt incredibly simple. It was all about gathering blood chi and exploding it at a single point to destroy an enemy from the inside out. It only took a few breaths for me to reach full mastery. I stood up and faced a large green boulder, about 3 feet high. I lunged forward, my fist blurring as I executed the Rolling Stone Punch. Thud! My fist hit the stone, leaving only a shallow mark on the surface. But a second later, the sound of cracking filled the air. The boulder began to shatter from the inside, crumbling into a pile of gravel that hissed as it hit the dirt. I pulled my hand back, feeling the power humming in my veins. I was more than ready. This technique allowed me to unleash incredible power. I felt a surge of pride swelling in my chest. Strength was everything here, and I had found the ultimate shortcut. Just by sitting in the sun, I was becoming a monster. In only one day, I had reached the 8th stage of the body refinement realm. My physique was already far beyond any normal student. If I kept this up, reaching the rank of a venerable was only a matter of time. As for the upcoming martial arts assessment, I didn't even worry about it. With my current strength, taking first place would be as easy as breathing. After testing my power, I left the outer city and headed home. My entire mindset had shifted. Before I gained this ability, I was terrified of the fierce beasts and worried about dying on the front lines. Now, my heart was as calm as still water. That's the kind of confidence only true power can give you. When I got back, the lights were still on. I used my key to open the door and stepped inside quietly. Xiao Fan, you're back. My father, Chen Fu, was lying on the sofa. He rubbed his sleepy eyes as he looked up at me. Dad, where are my sister and the others? Are they asleep? Yeah, he nodded. Your mom told me to wait up for you. Now that you're home, I can finally get some sleep. We didn't talk much. In my memories, I had never been good at communicating with my father. We exchanged a few brief words, and then I headed to my room. I took a quick shower and lay down on my bed. I looked at my palm in the dim light. I couldn't even see my pores anymore. My skin looked delicate, almost like white jade. It was a physical transformation that only came with high-level cultivation. I closed my eyes, excited for the assessment day, and fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, the bright sun woke me up. I pulled back the curtains, letting the light hit my skin. Immediately, the notifications started chiming in my head as energy flooded my body. I washed up and sat down at the dining table. My mom had prepared hot porridge and red bean buns. I took a bite of a bun and a sip of the porridge, feeling a wave of warmth hit my stomach. It felt good. But I noticed something strange. As my blood chi grew stronger, My appetite was becoming massive. I polished off 8 buns and a bowl of porridge, but I only felt half full. Usually, that would have been enough to last me a whole day. "Mom, cook more rice for lunch," I called out toward the kitchen. My mother, who was washing dishes, sounded happy when she replied. She probably thought I was finally recovering my spirits after the talent awakening. To a parent, seeing their kid eat well is the best sign. I spent the rest of the morning on the balcony, soaking up the sun. I felt refreshed. At this rate, I would hit the 10th stage of body refinement by the end of the day. My strength would skyrocket again. Even though I sat there all morning, I didn't quite hit the breakthrough yet, but I wasn't worried. I was already moving at lightning speed compared to everyone else. "Xiao Fan, when are you going back to school?" my mother asked during lunch. "I'm not going back until the martial arts assessment," I said, focusing on my food. My mother frowned for a second, but then her expression softened. She probably figured that as long as I was safe and happy, missing a month of school didn't matter. I was her only son, after all. Just then, the front door opened. My father, Chin Fu, came home early. He had taken a half-day off from work. When he saw me just lounging on the balcony after lunch, looking completely relaxed, he was stunned. To anyone else, I looked like I had given up on life. No books, no training, just sitting in the sun. "He's not going to school anymore," Chin Fu whispered to my mother after she filled him in. He couldn't believe it. I used to be a top student who obsessed over my studies. To see me lose interest in everything after my talent awakening was hard for him to swallow. "Don't speak so loud," my mother hissed, glaring at him. "If he doesn't want to go, he doesn't go. Don't let him hear you." My father lowered his voice. "Fine. Even if he doesn't go, he can find a decent job after he finishes his service on the front lines." They decided to go for a walk to give me some space. On their way out, they ran into my sister, Chin Shui, coming home. "Mom, Dad, why are you back so early?" she asked. "School cleaning day," she explained. "We got a half-day off. I'm going to stay in and read." "Just don't bother your brother," my mother warned. Chin Shui kicked off her shoes and put on her slippers. As she walked through the living room, she saw me tanning on the balcony. She sighed. She thought I had completely abandoned myself to despair. Outside, my parents ran into our neighbors, the Lius. "Old Chun, out for a walk," old Lu called out. He was a middle-aged man with a big smile. "Yeah, just digesting lunch," my father replied. "How's Xiao Fan doing?" old Lu asked, though his tone felt a bit pointed. "I heard he awakened a common-grade fire talent. Such a shame." My father went quiet. In this neighborhood, news traveled fast. Our boy wasn't great at studying. Old Lu continued, his chest puffing out with pride. But he surprised us all. He awakened an excellent grade fire talent. We were shocked. My wife and I only have common talents, so he's really surpassed us. He couldn't stop talking. He told my parents that his son had already reached the 4th stage of body refinement. He was boasting that the boy might even become a full martial artist by the time the assessment rolled around. My parents just stood there and listened, forced to endure the bragging they'd already heard a dozen times before. While they were talking, the sky began to change. A heavy blanket of black clouds rolled in, swallowing the stars and the remaining light of the day. Everything turned dark as the thick clouds blotted out the light. I let out a long yawn. The energy inside me had reached a boiling point. It was time. I whispered a command to myself to break through. Suddenly, a massive surge of power erupted from deep within my bones. Every inch of my muscle fiber came alive, twitching with newfound vitality. I closed my eyes and focused on the sensation of the strength expanding. After a long moment, I snapped my eyes open. Faint wisps of white steam rose from my skin, and I was drenched in sweat. I quickly washed off the grime and changed into fresh clothes. I had done it. I had successfully reached the 10th stage of body refinement. My physical strength had hit 10,000 pounds. This was a level of power that could rival a true martial artist. I needed to test my actual combat power. I pushed myself up, opened the front door, and headed out. As I walked down the paths of our residential complex, I ran into several young people out for their evening jogs. They greeted me warmly. "Xiao Fan, good evening," one called out. "Evening," I replied with a smile. Most of these people were neighbors who were on good terms with my parents. I kept the small talk brief and kept moving. After walking for about 20 minutes, I reached the southern edge of the complex. There was a public fitness area here, but it wasn't like the gyms from my past life. Along with the usual weights, there were combat power testing machines. These machines featured 10-inch LCD screens to display impact data. You could find them all over the city, though the ones in our neighborhood were older models. The limit on these machines was 10,000 points of combat power. That might not sound like much, but in a neighborhood like this, you wouldn't find a single person who could max it out. Anyone that's strong was already a powerful martial artist and would have moved to a high-end district with better resources long ago. I looked around. The area was deserted. Most people exercised in the morning and only took slow strolls at night. I felt a bit nervous. I really didn't know where I stood. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the machine. I circulated my internal energy, gathering it all into the palm of my hand. Then, I slammed my palm forward. The machine shook with a heavy thud. The screen flickered and then displayed a number, 5,000. My eyes lit up. I was right. My combat power was already at the level of a standard martial artist. This was enough to handle most ordinary fighters, and that was just a casual strike. I hadn't even used a martial technique yet. I was satisfied, but I wasn't done. I had 29 days left until the assessment. I was certain I could officially break into the martial artist rank by then. I wondered just how high I could go. My gaze sharpened. I raised my fist and slowly closed my eyes. I felt a strange, surging force condensing on my knuckles. My blood chi roared to life as I activated the rock-rolling punch. This time, the strike was terrifying. I hammered my fist into the machine. The machine shuddered violently. The numbers on the screen blurred as they climbed rapidly, finally stopping at 7,000. 7,000. That was equivalent to a third-rank martial artist. I was ecstatic. In just 2 days, I had gone from a weak first-stage student to this. This talent surpassed even God grade. The sun god body was giving me one hell of a surprise. I exhaled slowly. If I took the martial artist exam right now, I'd pass without question. And this was while using a basic F-grade technique. If I could get my hands on a higher-level technique, I could probably hit 10,000 points easily. My face was flushed with excitement. With this power, I could join a decent martial academy. Even if I didn't make it into the top 10, there were plenty of others. Once I graduated, I could open my own martial arts hall. The income from even a basic hall could earn more in a year than a commoner earned in a lifetime. It was a completely different social class. I realized I had underestimated myself. No, I had underestimated the sun god body. A faint golden tint appeared in my pupils. A God King level constitution like this could eventually absorb the true fire of the sun. The elemental power alone would rival top-tier techniques. I just wasn't strong enough to unlock that potential yet. I had to take it one step at a time. My priority was the official breakthrough. I suppressed my aura and calmed my breathing. I turned and started heading back home. On the way, I ran into a group of my classmates. 2 of them were a couple, walking hand in hand. In this era, it was common to get married in high school. Once you awakened your talent, you were headed for the battlefield. Many chose to have children early because no one knew if they'd ever come back from the front lines. The legal marriage age had even been lowered to 16 to encourage population growth. "Good evening, Chen Fan," they called out. I had helped many of them with their studies in the past, so they were always friendly toward me. I nodded politely. "Are you coming back to school?" one girl asked. She wore a light blue uniform and had awakened a common talent like me. "I'll wait until after the assessment," I said. "I'm heading home now. See ya." I waved and kept walking. Behind me, I heard a boy snort in annoyance. He had always been jealous of my grades. "Still acting so arrogant," he muttered, his voice dripping with spite. "He's just a common grade loser like the rest of us." I ignored the spiteful comments and kept walking. I knew my worth, even if they didn't. Chen Fan used to be the top student in our grade. A girl named Wang Ying said, her voice soft. "It's normal for him to have a bit of pride." One of the boys smirked at her. "We all know you have a crush on him, Wang Ying. That's the only reason you're defending him." Wang Ying glanced at him but didn't say another word. She was pretty, with a slender figure and delicate features. Many guys in our class liked her, but she stayed quiet. "If you like him, go for it," another guy added. He was part of the couple I'd passed earlier. After the assessment, we're all headed for the front lines. It's a death sentence for most of us. Don't leave any regrets. His girlfriend pinched his waist, clearly annoyed. Stop giving her bad advice. The guy just laughed, though his eyes were serious. I'm not joking. The front lines are brutal. Ordinary martial artists are just cannon fodder. That's the reality. A heavy silence fell over the group. Most of them were 18. They had awakened their talents, and most were common grade. They knew their fate was to be sent into the meat grinder of war. None of them knew if they would ever come back. Lu Ling, what's your cultivation level now? One of the girls asked. Her name was Chu Wei, and she was the undisputed class beauty. Even Wang Ying couldn't match her looks. Lu Ling, the guy who had been talking, lifted his chin with pride. I've reached the 4th stage of body refinement. It's nothing special, really. That's amazing. Chu Wei gasped. She was a year younger and hadn't awakened yet, but she knew what that meant. A 4th stage student had a real shot at breaking through to become an official martial artist within the month and passing the elite assessment. Lu Ling's girlfriend looked at him in shock and joy. You broke through? Why didn't you tell me? It only happened yesterday, Lu Ling said, ruffling her hair. He started walking toward the testing equipment. My family got me some extra cultivation resources. I'm going to try and become a full martial artist before the month is up. His girlfriend's eyes lit up. You really think you can do it? It's not a problem, Lu Ling said, his voice dripping with confidence. My combat power has already hit 1,000. With enough resources, the martial artist rank is within reach. He looked around, soaking in the admiring glances from his classmates. Even Chu Wei looked impressed. It felt good to be the center of attention. It's a shame about Chun Fan, Chu Wei sighed. He had such good grades. If he hadn't awakened a common talent, he'd probably be a martial artist by now too. She had always liked me. I was refined, smart, and always the one giving speeches on stage. For years, I had been the brightest star in the grade. Everyone assumed I'd awaken an excellent, or even superior talent. Good grades don't guarantee a strong talent, Lu Ling said arrogantly. It just increases the odds. Chen Fan was just unlucky. Lu Ling felt a surge of satisfaction. He used to be jealous of me, but now, he felt he had finally surpassed me. To him, I was just a tragic figure, a former genius destined to die as a foot soldier while he rose to greatness. Watch this, Lu Ling said. I'll show you exactly where my power is at. He stepped up to the testing machine. The red light on the display was dark, meaning someone had just used it a minute or two ago. Lu Ling didn't care. He took a deep breath, clenched his fist, and threw a heavy punch. Boom. The machine shuddered under the impact. Numbers flashed onto the screen. 1000. 4th stage. Chu Wei whispered, her eyes wide with envy. The other students crowded around, offering congratulations. Even Wang Ying looked at Lu Ling differently now. In this world, strength was everything. Talent was the ultimate aphrodisiac. As for me, Wang Ying's interest was fading. I had become ordinary, and in her eyes, that meant I was no longer worth watching. Wait, Chu Wei said, pointing at the machine's interface. The light was still on when we got here. That means someone tested their power just 2 or 3 minutes ago. She looked down the path I had just taken. Chen Fan was the only one here before us. It must have been him. Let's see what the genius clocked in at, Lu Ling sneered. He began scrolling through the machine's recent logs. When the last record popped up, Lu Ling froze. The color drained from his face. He rubbed his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating. No way. That's impossible, he stammered. The others crowded in to look. The silence that followed was deafening. Every single one of them looked like they had seen a ghost. The number on the screen was bright red, 7000. 7,000. That wasn't just a high score. That was deep into the territory of a professional martial artist. There was only one person here. Chu Wei whispered, her voice trembling. It was Chen Fan. Is it possible? He didn't actually awaken a common talent. Maybe it wasn't him, Wang Ying suggested, though the area was completely deserted. Lu Ling's eyes snapped wide as a wild thought hit him. I know. He must have awakened a transcendent talent. As soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted them. It sounded insane. Even a transcendent talent shouldn't be able to reach that level of power in just a few days. It can't be Chun Fan, a boy named Zhang Wu said. He was the perpetual second-place student who had always lived in my shadow. He was tested. It was common grade. Even a transcendent talent can't jump to 7,000 power in a week. He looked around the empty training grounds, his voice shaking. If it wasn't Chun Fan, then who the hell was it? Manhwa spoke up, her voice filled with curiosity. The others stood there, heads bowed in deep thought, trying to come up with a better explanation. None of them could. I watched them from the shadows, knowing exactly what they were thinking. They didn't want to believe it was me. I don't think it was Chun Fan either, one of them said. Sure, his grades are good, but there's no way he awakened a transcendent talent. Those are 1 in a million. In the history of our high school, hell, in the history of this entire city, no one has ever awakened a talent like that. Wang Ying nodded frantically. She was the one who wanted me to stay a failure the most. Not long ago, she had decided I wasn't dazzling anymore. I was no longer her ideal boyfriend. If I had actually performed that feat, it meant she was blind. She'd become the laughingstock of the school. Then which martial artist was it? Someone asked. Who came here to test their power? No one answered. To these students, a full-fledged martial artist was a legendary figure. In their group, only Lu Ling had a real shot at reaching that level. For the rest of them, their current starting point was likely the furthest they would ever go in life. That was the harsh reality of talent. It decided your status, your power, and your future. Forget it, Lu Ling said, her voice dripping with newfound confidence. Why are we guessing? I'll be a martial artist soon enough. Maybe I'll even break through to become a martial master one day. She looked like she was glowing with pride. Even Manhwa couldn't help but look at her with envy. An excellent grade talent was the peak of their class. Manhwa knew she was pretty, but in this world, beauty was cheap. A powerful martial artist would never lack beautiful women. Strength was the only truth. Lu Ling, don't forget us when you make it big. The students chirped, crowding around her. Yeah, give us a hand later. Let us work in your martial arts hall. They knew that once they graduated, the gap between them and Lu Ling would become a canyon. They were lucky to even be in the same room as her now. Don't worry, Lu Ling said, beaming. I won't forget you guys. Her girlfriend stood by her side, feeling a mix of pride and anxiety. She could see the way the other girls looked at Lu Ling. But she knew the real threat would come after graduation, when Lu Ling gained real power and met even more beautiful women. She had heard the stories, men and women who gained strength and immediately abandoned their past lives. Do you think Wang Long could have reached the martial artist realm already? Wang Ying asked suddenly. Everyone turned to her like she was crazy. Impossible, Lu Ling snapped. He has an elite-grade fire talent, but talent takes time. He's at the 8th stage of body refinement at most. A martial artist isn't some common vegetable you can just pick up off the street. I agree, Chue added. Her father was a martial master, so she knew the struggle better than anyone. To break through, you need deep accumulation. If you force it, you'll just cripple yourself. Wang Ying let out a long breath of relief. She didn't want me to suffer, but she definitely didn't want me to succeed. Then it definitely wasn't Chun Fan. It must have been some powerful warrior passing through who wanted a quick test. We just didn't see them because their movement was too fast for us to track. Satisfied with that lie, the group finally left. The training ground went silent again. Meanwhile, I arrived home. I flicked on the lights and flopped onto the sofa. I turned on the TV, scrolling past cartoons until I hit a drama called Extreme Racing. It wasn't about cars. It was about a fishmonger who rose to become a grandmaster. I watched a few episodes, fascinated. The fight scenes were incredible. The grandmasters could summon torrents of flame and shatter mountains with a single palm strike. They could tear apart beasts the size of hills with their bare hands. That's real power, I whispered. The martial arts they used were light years beyond mine. I realized that if I wanted to keep growing, I needed better techniques. I tapped my finger on the sofa, my mind drifting away from the TV. I was reaching the limit of my current skills. The Rolling Stone Punch was a basic F-grade technique. Anyone could learn it if they put in the time. It was the bottom of the barrel. It only boosted my combat power by about 2,000, not even doubling my base strength. I knew that high-level techniques could multiply your power by 10 or even dozens of times. If I had a technique like that, my 5,000 base power could hit like 50,000. I could kill a professional martial artist with ease. But those were S-grade techniques. I couldn't even get near them. Besides, those moves required a body strong enough to handle the pressure. If a weakling tried to use an S-grade move, they'd literally explode. That's why students were restricted to F-grade skills. A few geniuses could handle E-grade techniques early, and I knew I was one of them. My body could take it. The problem was the price. I can't afford them, I sighed. The schools sold them, and so did private shops, but the cost was astronomical. My family was ordinary. Even if my parents emptied their entire savings, we couldn't afford a single E-grade manual. I had a feeling I could even master a D-grade technique if I could just get my hands on one. But for now, I was stuck. I grabbed the remote and clicked off the TV. I wasn't in the mood for soap operas anymore. My mind was racing, itching with a single question. How could I get my hands on high-level martial arts? It was frustrating. I had this god-tier talent, but without the right techniques, I was like a giant with massive muscles who didn't know how to throw a punch. I had all this raw power and no way to focus it. Then, I remembered something from the show I'd just been watching. The main character, a fishmonger, rose to power by heading outside the city walls to hunt mutated beasts. He traded their carcasses for money and bought better manuals. When I first saw it, I thought it was ridiculous. In the show, the guy was only a first-stage martial artist. Going outside the city at that level was suicide. I knew the reality. The monsters coming through the spatial cracks were terrifying. Even a fourth-stage martial artist wasn't guaranteed to come back in one piece. But I didn't need to hunt the high-level ones. I could target the low-level beasts, ordinary animals that had mutated. I'd dealt with that giant wolf before. They were scary to look at, but they relied on basic instincts. They just lunged and bit. They were easy to read. The problem was, they weren't worth much. Any amateur could kill them, so the market was flooded. To make real money, I needed to hunt martial artist-level beasts. Once an animal reached level 2 mutation, it became a different kind of nightmare. Maybe I'll try it after I break through, I thought. The risk was high, but the rewards were massive. I had a feeling that once I officially became a martial artist, my combat power would skyrocket. I'd probably be able to take on a fourth-stage veteran. I had no other choice. Poor kids have to grow up fast. My parents couldn't provide me with top-tier manuals, so I had to be my own provider. I didn't blame them, though. Most people in this world were just ordinary folks trying to survive. We needed people to just live and have families to keep the human race going. But I wanted to be the hope for that future. I stood up, poured a glass of water, and downed it in one go. I wanted to break through right now, but I couldn't rush it. The sun was down, and my progress had stalled for the night. Feeling restless, I started scrolling through my phone. A video caught my eye. Who will be the champion of the martial arts assessment? I clicked it immediately. It was a ranking of the top 10 geniuses in the 36 cities. Number 10 was Wang Yin, a guy with a top-tier elite fire talent. He was expected to hit the late stages of the martial artist rank before the exam. Number 9 was Lu Sheng, with a top-tier elite ice talent that rivaled transcendent grades. And then there was number 1, Feng Changtian. He had a top-tier transcendent talent, bordering on saint grade. My heart hammered against my ribs. I felt the pressure. These kids had elite resources and powerful families backing them. Most were already mid-stage martial artists. I remembered hearing that Lu Sheng was the top talent in our city, Star City, but on this list, he was only 9th. There's always a bigger fish, I muttered. These geniuses were miles ahead of me in cultivation and had access to the best techniques. The number 1 guy, Feng Changtian, might even reach the martial master rank by the time the assessment started. But the pressure didn't scare me. It fueled me. My talent was God King grade. I started late, but I was destined to leave them all in the dust. Over the next 5 days, I left early and came back late every day. My mother watched me with worried eyes every time I walked through the door. "Where have you been, Chin Fan?" she asked one evening. "You're out at dawn and you don't even come home for lunch." "Just walking around, Mom," I said, heading straight for the dinner table. "I've been eating at the buffet for lunch." I didn't tell her that I was eating enough for 6 people. I still remembered the buffet owner's face when I left. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Brother, why are you eating so much lately?" my sister, Chin Shui, asked, leaning in close. "You aren't even getting fat. Focus on your homework," I told her, not looking up from my bowl. This is grown-up business. She rolled her eyes. You're only a few years older than me. I ignored her and kept eating. I needed the energy. After 5 long days, I had finally accumulated 1,500 energy points. The notification I'd been waiting for finally appeared. Breakthrough available. The energy requirement for the martial artist rank was massive compared to the earlier stages. I was buzzing with anticipation. I slipped out of the house and found a secluded spot in a deserted park. Breakthrough, I whispered. The energy vanished from my system instantly. A wave of heat surged through me. My skin started to glow, and suddenly, golden flames erupted from my body, burning fiercely in the dark. I felt like a cup that had been filled to the very brim, and now, the water was finally overflowing. A powerful shockwave of blood chi exploded outward from my chest. My clothes snapped and fluttered in the invisible wind. It was done. I was officially a martial artist. My muscles ached with a dull, throbbing soreness, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of absolute power. It was a complete evolution. The flames died down, and I clenched my fists. My raw strength hadn't just increased, it had exploded. I felt 10 times stronger than I was just a minute ago. Before this breakthrough, my raw combat power sat at 10,000 pounds. Now, it had reached a terrifying 100,000. I felt a surge of confidence radiating from my core. With this kind of strength, I was certain I could kill an ordinary martial artist with a single punch, even without using any special techniques. My power hadn't just grown, it had multiplied. The old saying was true, after 3 days of absence, you had to look at a man with new eyes. I rolled my shoulders, feeling the tension in my bones, and threw a test punch into the empty air. The sound was like a whip cracking. My speed had increased several times over, and the air itself seemed to moan as if it were being torn apart. Despite this raw power, I had a problem. I lacked a suitable martial art. I tried practicing my rock-rolling punch, but it was too weak now. It couldn't channel my true strength. It felt like trying to force a river through a straw. I needed something stronger. I knew that with a high-level technique, I could easily match a 6th-stage martial artist without breaking a sweat. I remembered seeing a Grade 1 martial art on the school's official website. Even if it was the most basic Grade 1 technique, it would still be leagues better than the F-grade junk I was using. Once I mastered that, I could head outside the city walls to hunt mutated beasts without much risk. That was the plan: hunt, trade, and get even stronger. But I couldn't just leave. To reach the areas where the Grade 2 beasts lived, creatures that could actually challenge a martial artist, I had to go to the second perimeter. That was the front line. Star City was divided into 4 zones, and the 4th zone was the absolute edge, rumored to be home to Grade 4 beasts that could rival a Grandmaster. As a student, I needed official permission to go that far. I headed home first to grab a few things. "Mom, I'm heading to school," I called out as I walked through the door. "I might be staying in the dorms for a while, so don't expect me home every night." My mom looked up, concerned. "Are you staying on campus? Do you have enough money?" "I've got enough. I'm off," I said, quickly heading back out. I hated lying to her, but I couldn't tell her I was heading to the monster-infested front lines. She would never let me go. I walked to the bus station and hopped on the number 8 bus, dropping a few coins into the slot. The bus was packed, so I stood in the aisle, gripping the handrail. Looking at the mix of people, men, women, students in uniforms, it felt almost like my past life. Except here, people could control the elements and monsters lurked behind walls. I noticed several schoolgirls whispering and stealing glances at me. Ever since I broke through, my skin had become clearer, my frame more robust, and I carried a natural, masculine energy. "That guy is so handsome," one whispered. "He looks like that celebrity I like." "Do you think he's a martial artist?" her friend asked. "Probably not. Why would a martial artist take the bus?" I hid a smile. My hearing had become incredibly sharp after the breakthrough. They had no idea. Because of my sun god body, my evolution was far more intense than any ordinary person's. I wasn't just a martial artist. I was something more. Star City First High School. "Passengers departing, please prepare to exit," the automated voice announced. I stepped off the bus and looked up at the massive gates of my school. It had only been a few days, but it felt like a lifetime. Students were everywhere, chatting in the hallways or soaking up the sun during their break. I made my way to class one of the second year. Chun Fan, you're back? Why didn't you tell me? A slightly chubby student in a blue uniform jogged toward me, his face lighting up with a grin. This was Zhao Hong, my best friend. He was a talker, the kind of guy who could fill a room with words. We haven't played games in ages. You haven't been online? I was starting to get worried. He started rambling, and I just stood there, listening. It wasn't that I didn't want to talk, but with Zhao Hong, you couldn't get a word in edgewise. Around us, other students started whispering. Chun Fan is back. Guess he finally accepted reality, one murmured. The assessment is coming up. If he stays in school, the teachers might help him survive the front lines, another added. Most of them had common talent like I supposedly did, and they were terrified of being sent out to fight. Zhao Hong finally took a breath. Seriously, where have you been? You've missed so much class, you're going to fall behind. He was genuinely worried. We weren't brothers by blood, but we were as close as it got. I opened my mouth to answer, but a shadow fell over us. Well, look who showed up. A tall, burly student about 6'3" blocked my path. He was my age, but looked like he was in his 30s, with a face that had aged prematurely. His name was Lu Hai. He had a smug, mocking sneer. I thought you stayed away because you found some secret way to pass the exam, Lu Hai laughed. But looking at you, you just chickened out, didn't you? Are you scared young Master Wong is going to crush you? Because honestly, he could pin you down with one finger now. He was a lapdog for Wong Long, a rich kid in our grade. Wong Long's father was a powerful martial master, and Wong Long himself had awakened an elite grade talent. He was the school's golden boy, and he and I had a history. Lu Hai was just here to do his dirty work. Nothing good ever comes out of that dog mouth of yours, Zhao Hong snapped. He was furious. Lu Hai was nothing more than Wong Long's loyal lapdog. It annoyed me that the master wasn't even here, yet his lackey was already barking at my heels. Stay out of this, Zhao Hong, Lu Hai warned, his eyes narrowing. If you offend young Master Wong, you won't have a happy ending either. He turned back to me, his lip curling in disgust. Chun Fan, if you're smart, you'll go apologize to young Master Wong right now. If you get on your knees and beg for mercy, he might let this slide. But if you keep acting tough, you won't even know how you died. Lu Hai let out a cold laugh. He looked at me like I was something he'd stepped on in the street. I kept my face calm, staring back at him. I remembered this guy. He had excellent grade talent, which was decent, but to me, he was just a background character in Wong Long's shadow. Where's Wong Long? I asked. Lu Hai's face darkened instantly. Is that a name you're allowed to speak? He hated me. I knew why. Aside from my good grades, I didn't have much going for me, or so everyone thought. But the school beauty, Chu Xian, had always paid attention to me, completely ignoring Wong Long. Chu Xian was the dream of every guy on campus. She was stunning, graceful, and her father was a terrifyingly powerful grandmaster. She was like a dragon in the sky, unreachable for someone like Lu Hai. He could accept it if Wong Long won her over, but the fact that she was close to a poor kid like me, it ate him alive. To him, I was just a pretty boy with a weak background. Don't push it too far, Zhao Hong growled, his fists clenched. He looked ready to throw down right there. Zhao Hong, why do you stick with him? Lu Hai sneered, trying to drive a wedge between us. What's the point of being his little follower? Zhao Hong didn't even blink. He ignored the bait completely. Enough, I said. My voice was quiet, but the air around us suddenly went still. I was a martial artist now. The power surging in my blood created an invisible pressure, a weight that settled over the hallway. The chatter around us died instantly. Lu Hai froze. He looked at me, confusion flickering in his eyes. To him, I was supposed to be a sheep with common grade talent. He was the one with excellent grade talent. He was supposed to be the predator. But for a split second, I saw his pupils dilate. He felt it. It was as if a mountain cat had suddenly realized it was standing in front of a tiger. The feeling vanished as quickly as it appeared. I pulled my aura back, returning to a state of calm. Lu Hai blinked, shaking his head. He clearly thought he'd imagined it. I was a loser after all. What's with the big voice? He taunted, trying to reclaim his bravado. You want to fight? I could flatten you with one hand. He was desperate to provoke me. He knew if he beat me up, word would get back to Wong Long, and he'd be rewarded. He wanted to use me as a stepping stone to climb higher. It was a pity he didn't realize I had awakened a talent unseen in human history. With my current strength, I could have ended him with a single strike. I could sense his energy. He was only at the 5th stage of body refinement. His blood chi was pitifully thin compared to mine. Oh, I forgot to tell you, Lu Hai added with a malicious grin. Chu Xin awakened her talent too. Elite grade wind element. She's destined to be a grandmaster. The gap between you two is only going to get bigger until she's out of your sight forever. He was trying to break my spirit. I thought of Chu Xin, the long black hair, the delicate features, the way she carried herself like a pure lotus. She was the top of the school in every category. If I really only had common talent, we would indeed live in 2 different worlds. But I wasn't the old Chen fan. I was a traveler in this world, and my only goal was to become the strongest version of myself. Beauty was fine, but power was everything. Lu Hai, you're doing this on purpose, Zhao Hing shouted, stepping forward. My gaze turned icy. I couldn't kill him here, but I was more than ready to give him a lesson he'd never forget. Oh, I'm so scared, Lu Hai mocked, holding his hands up. Why don't you both come at me at once? He was baiting us to swing first. What are you all doing here? A clear, cold voice cut through the tension. A girl walked toward us, her long hair swaying. Her face was as perfect as a porcelain doll, and a luxury red bracelet shimmered on her wrist. Chu Xin, Lu Hai stuttered. His attitude flipped instantly. He wouldn't dare insult her, not just because she was a genius, but because she was the girl Wang Long had claimed. We were just chatting, Lu Hai said, forcing a smile. Chatting. Chu Xion's brow furrowed. That's not what it sounded like to me. Lu Hai's face paled. He realized she had heard everything. Get back to class too, Chu Xion said, her voice like a freezing wind. Don't let me see you here again. Lu Hai looked like he'd been slapped, his face turning a sour shade of red. Lu Hai didn't dare vent his anger on the school beauty. Instead, he turned his glare toward me. Chen Fan, you just wait, he hissed, his voice trembling with rage. During the practical combat class, I'm going to teach you a lesson you'll never forget. He spun on his heel and stormed back to class 2. I looked at Zhao Hong. Practical combat class? Since when? We used to just study books, Zhao Hong explained, his expression worried. But now that everyone has awakened their talents, the school added combat drills to the curriculum. I nodded slowly. Good. I understand. If Lu Hai was so desperate to get beaten, I didn't mind helping him out. I kept a calm face, but inside, I was cold. To the other students watching, my silence looked like fear. It's over for Chun Fan, someone whispered. He offended Lu Hai. He's going to get crushed in class. Lu Hai has great talent, but he's petty and vindictive, another student added. Chun Fan is in real trouble. The school doesn't stop these fights unless someone is seriously hurt. Broken bones are common. I ignored the gossip and turned to Chu Xian. Thanks for stepping in. It's fine, she said, her eyes lingering on me. But you need to be careful. Lu Hai is a snake, and his cultivation is likely much higher than yours. If you can't handle it, just skip the combat class. Don't push yourself. She looked at me with a complicated expression. A year ago, I was the top student in the grade, and she was always second. She was competitive, constantly pushing herself to catch up to me, even asking me for help with difficult problems. Back then, she respected me. She thought we would both awaken powerful talents and stand at the peak together. But fate was cruel. I had awakened a common grade talent. In her eyes, we now lived in 2 different worlds. I'll be careful, I said. I didn't bother explaining that I wasn't worried. People rarely believe the truth anyway. Chu Xian forced a small, beautiful smile. Chen Fan, even with a common talent, you can still become a strong martial artist if you work hard. Don't give up. Her smile was stunning, like the first light of dawn. Even I felt a momentary flash of admiration for her beauty. She turned and walked away, leaving a graceful silhouette behind. I watched her go, my heart as still as water. As she rounded the corner, Chu Xian let out a long sigh. She glanced back at me one last time, her eyes filled with pity. If only you had awakened an elite talent, she whispered to herself. She had liked me once, but she knew how this world worked. Talent was everything. A powerful martial artist would marry another powerful martial artist to ensure their children inherited strong genes. There was no future for us. This was the last time she would help me. The gap between us would only grow until we were strangers. Besides, she knew the survival rate on the front lines was low for people like me. I had missed days of school, missed the basic training, and had the lowest grade talent. In this cruel era, if you weren't strong, you died, either on the battlefield or when the beasts eventually breached the city walls. I hope you at least survive the front lines, she murmured, before walking away for good. Zhao Hing nudged my shoulder, grinning. Man, the school beauty is still looking back at you. I think she's still got feelings. Don't talk nonsense, I replied, rolling my eyes. I'm just trying to lighten the mood, Zhao Heng said, his smile fading. But seriously, her aura is terrifying. I bet her strength has already reached 5,000 pounds. The pressure she gives off is insane. I didn't feel any pressure at all. Yeah, she's strong, I said simply. She's an elite talent, a total monster, Zhao Heng sighed. We can't compare. But really, Chen Fan, do you have a plan for Lu Hai? If not, just stay home. I'm going, I said, my voice firm. I want to see exactly what he's learned. Zhao Heng looked confused by my confidence, but he knew I was too stubborn to change my mind. I walked into the Class 1 classroom. My old desk was covered in a thin layer of dust from my absence. As I sat down, a girl named Wang Ying approached me. She used to look at me with idolizing eyes when I was the top scholar, but now, she just looked at me like I was a fool. Are you really going to the combat class? She asked. Yes, I said, barely looking up. You should give it up, she urged. Lu Hai has excellent grade talent. The gap between you is too big. Look at Lu Ling. She had a combat power of 1,000 days ago, and she's probably even stronger now. People with excellent talent are the future. They become true martial masters. You're just asking for a beating. People like me were destined to be left behind. That was the unspoken rule of this world. Once the gap in talent opened up, our lives would never cross paths again. Wang Ying was right about one thing. The old Chen Fan wouldn't have stood a chance against Lu Hai. Lu Hai was annoying, but after his awakening, he had surpassed almost everyone in our grade. More importantly, he was a follower of Wang Xiao, also known as Wang Long. Wang Long was one of the few elite talents in our school. He was a future grandmaster, someone destined to reach the same level as our principal. I just smiled at Wang Ying's warning. I didn't bother explaining myself. She seemed like she was worried, but I could feel the coldness underneath. In her mind, it was already a fact that I was inferior. Don't worry about it, Zhao Hong, I said, seeing my friend's frustrated expression. The truth always stung a little, but I wasn't the person they thought I was. Is the teacher coming this morning? Not until the practical class this afternoon, Zhao Hong replied. Since we awakened our talents, we don't have to study theory anymore. We just cultivate. I nodded. I had arrived too early, but there was no point in going home now. I glanced down at a small mirror sitting on Zhao Heng's desk. The face reflecting back was familiar, yet different. It was handsome, but my eyes held a sharp, piercing light. I realized that if I stopped suppressing my aura, the people around me would probably collapse. It would be like a frog encountering its natural predator, a primal, instinctive fear. Right now, my combat power had jumped from 5,000 to 50,000, a tenfold increase. I hadn't even tested my full strength yet. I didn't even know how strong I actually was. My hair was getting a bit long. I made a mental note to cut it later. Time passed quickly. By 2 p.m., we were all gathered in the school's massive martial arts hall. The floor was divided into different practice zones. Our class gathered around a thin, middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses. This was our class teacher, Zhang Xinghua. He looked refined and scholarly, but the blood qi radiating from him was heavy. He was a powerful martial master who had slaughtered countless beasts on the front lines. We all respected him, but it wasn't until our own awakenings that we realized just how terrifying a martial master truly was. For today's practical session, I'm going to teach you a powerful level 1 martial art, Zhang Xinghua announced. Teacher, isn't level 1 martial arts only for true warriors? A student asked, raising his hand. Is it safe for us? Zhang Xinghua smiled. The textbooks are a bit outdated. These techniques have been refined over generations. You won't be able to unleash their full power yet, but they are safe to practice. He ordered the class monitor to distribute the manuals. I opened mine and looked at the name, Collapsing Palm. It involved gathering blood chi into the palm of the hand. It was similar to the rock-rolling punch I had practiced before, but this was much more sophisticated. It allowed for a much greater output of power. Watch closely, Zhang Jinghua said. He circulated his blood chi. His palm began to glow a dull, angry red, looking like a piece of heated iron. He struck forward. The air shrieked. A violent gust of wind slammed into us, and for a split second, it felt like a massive, invisible hand was rushing toward my face. It was an illusion created by his sheer pressure. Holy crap, that's insane, Zhao Heng shouted, his eyes glued to the manual. The other students were just as fired up. They began studying the book like their lives depended on it, and in a way, they did. The better you learn to fight, the better your chances of surviving the battlefield. I looked at the manual for a few seconds, and then closed it. I had already mastered it. For others, this was a complex puzzle. For me, it was as simple as breathing. Suddenly, a female teacher rushed into our area. She looked to be in her 40s, but was still quite striking. She whispered something to Zhang Jinghua, asking him to cover her class for the afternoon. He agreed, and a moment later, the students from Class 2 filed in. Lu Hai was among them. The moment he saw me, a smug, provocative grin spread across his face. He mouthed a silent insult, trying to bait me into a reaction. I didn't even blink. To me, he was just a small, insignificant speck. Zhang Jinghua repeated his lecture for the new arrivals and demonstrated the collapsing palm again. The students from Class 2 were just as stunned as my classmates had been. They immediately dove into the manual, but I could see the frustration on their faces. This wasn't a move you could learn in a day. Most of them couldn't even figure out how to start. Not everyone was struggling. A few students had confident looks on their faces as they focused on the manual. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. Zhang Jinghua scanned the crowd, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Who wants to come up and demonstrate, he asked. You'll be sparring with me. This was a massive opportunity. Getting one-on-one pointers from a professional martial master was rare. The students started whispering immediately. I haven't even reached the entry level yet. Zhao Heng sighed next to me. I feel like I'm right on the edge of understanding it, but I just can't break through. Zhang Jinghua looked around. Lu Ling isn't here, so Lu Hai, you come up. It made sense. He chose the student with the excellent grade talent. In his mind, only someone like Lu Hai could have possibly grasped the collapsing palm in such a short time. For everyone else, it was basically impossible. Lu Hai stepped forward, his chest puffed out with pride. He was beaming. This wasn't just practice. It was a chance to be personally guided by a master. It was a golden ticket. Must be nice to have excellent talent, one student muttered. Yeah, they get all the attention. Another whispered, eyes full of envy. Suddenly, I raised my hand. Teacher, can I go up and demonstrate? The entire training ground went silent. Everyone stared at me like I had grown a second head. They all knew who I was, the guy with the common grade talent. It had only been an hour. There was no way I could have learned it. To them, I was just asking for a beating. I didn't care what they thought. I hadn't just learned it, I had mastered it. My goal wasn't to show off, though. I wanted to get out of this school, head into the wild, and kill beasts to get better manuals. I didn't want to waste another second here. Chen Fan, did you even reach the entry level? Lu Hai sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. You're just a clown looking for attention. Zhang Jinghua frowned. He looked at me with a hint of pity. He used to have high hopes for me, but since my talent awakening, he had basically written me off. In this world, if you couldn't become a powerful warrior, you were nothing. If you want to practice, that's fine, Zhang Jinghua said, his voice neutral. But instead of sparring with me, you students can spar with each other. I'll supervise. He didn't want to waste his time sparring with a common grade student. It was like a PhD professor trying to explain basic math to a toddler. It was frustrating and slow. With an excellent grade student, he only had to explain things once. With someone like me, he figured he'd have to repeat himself 10 times. The other students got excited. Now they all had a chance to get on stage and show what they could do. Teacher, I said calmly, I've already completely mastered the collapsing palm. If I spar with the other students, I might actually hurt them. A few people actually burst out laughing. It was a joke to them. A common-grade fire talent claiming to have mastered a complex technique in an hour? It was delusional. Are you insane? Lu Hai laughed so hard he clutched his stomach. Did you learn it in a dream? That's the funniest thing I've heard all day. Zhang Jinghua shook his head. He wondered if the shock of my low talent had finally broken my mind. Only a top-tier transcendent talent could learn that fast. All right, enough, Zhang Jinghua called out. Everyone who wants to spar, raise your hands. I'll pair you up. Hands shot up everywhere. But before the teacher could speak, Lu Hai stepped forward. Teacher, since Chen Fan says he's mastered it, why don't he and I have the first match? Zhang Jinghua thought about it for a second and nodded. Fine, but Lu Hai, don't hit him too hard. I know, teacher, Lu Hai said, a dark glint in his eyes. Zhao Hing grabbed my arm, his face pale. He's going to kill you. With his talent, he's definitely learned the move. He's just looking for an excuse to bully you. This is too much. I just smiled at him. Don't worry, I really did learn it. Zhao Heng didn't believe me. He thought I was just trying to act tough, so he wouldn't worry. He couldn't stand it. Teacher, Zhao Heng shouted, raising his hand. If we can pick our opponents, I want to fight Lu Hai first. He was trying to protect me. He knew Lu Hai wouldn't show mercy to me, but maybe he'd be less aggressive with someone else. Lu Hai let out a cold laugh. You've got guts, Zhao Heng. Fine. I don't mind warming up on you before I get to Chen Fan. He wanted to beat Zhao Heng senseless right in front of me, just to see if I'd still be acting so calm afterward. Zhang Jinghua shrugged. He didn't care about their personal beef. To him, these were just kids playing around. The real world, the battlefield, was where life and death actually mattered. I allow it, Zhang Jinghua said. He was curious to see their levels, but in his heart, he already knew the winner. Talent was everything. I was just another face in the crowd now, the formerly promising kid who would soon be forgotten. Zhao Heng stepped onto the stage, his expression grim. He began to circulate his blood qi, pushing his body to its absolute limit. It was his only hope of surviving a fight with Lu Hai. Lu Hai didn't even look tense. He stretched his arms casually, his aura beginning to flare. You're so weak, Lu Hai said. He wasn't even mocking him. He was just stating a fact. Let's see about that, Zhao Heng growled. Lu Hai's eyes snapped shut for a split second, and then his blood qi exploded. He had reached the 6th stage of body refinement yesterday. Compared to Zhao Heng, his power was on a completely different level. When Lu Hai let his power loose, the pressure was suffocating. Zhao Heng looked like a tiny lamb standing before a hungry tiger. The gap was just too wide. Even before they traded blows, the sheer weight of Lu Hai's blood qi made Zhao Heng tremble. He was only at the 3rd stage of body refinement. He shouldn't have stood a chance. But Zhao Heng didn't back down. He grit his teeth, took a deep breath, and clenched his fist. He threw everything he had into a single strike, focusing his blood qi into a single point of impact. It was the Rolling Stone punch. The air seemed to ripple with the force of it. The students nearby gasped, their faces shifting with shock. Even Lu Hai's expression flickered for a second. Interesting, Lu Hai said, a smirk returning to his face. It looks like you've actually mastered the Rolling Stone punch. But against my crushing palm, you're still nothing. Lu Hai's eyes turned cold. He stepped forward, his blood qi surging into his palm as he thrust it out. The pressure intensified, bearing down on Zhao Heng like a collapsing mountain. Their attacks collided. A heavy thud echoed through the air. Zhao Heng was sent stumbling back, his boots skidding across the dirt as he lost his balance. He was about to hit the ground hard when a firm hand caught his back. He didn't fall. I held him steady. Chen Fan, is that you? Zhao Heng turned around, his eyes wide with surprise. He probably expected Teacher Zhang to be the one to save him. I didn't say much. Zhao Heng wasn't seriously hurt. His blood qi was just a bit rattled from the impact. This was just a light spar, and Lu Hai hadn't gone for a killing blow. He was saving that energy for me. Zhang Jinghua hadn't been paying much attention to me before. But the moment I stepped out of the crowd, his gaze locked onto me. I could feel his confusion. To him, it was as if a lion had suddenly appeared in a flock of sheep. The aura I was radiating wasn't that of a student. It was the presence of a true warrior. Teacher, I said, walking toward him. Zhao Heng lost. Let me take the next round. Zhang Jinghua studied me closely. He was a powerful martial artist, and he could sense the massive reservoir of blood chi hidden beneath my skin. Even though I had only let a fraction of it leak out for a split second, he knew. He knew I was stronger than Lu Hai. He started wondering if the talent testing machine had malfunctioned. Chen Fan, Zhang Jinghua said, his voice filled with newfound respect. What is your current cultivation level? First stage martial artist, I replied honestly. I had already broken through. There was no point in hiding it anymore. Lu Hai burst out laughing. Chen Fan, you've finally lost your mind. Even the students with elite grade talent haven't reached the martial artist stage yet. You're delusional. The other students joined in, their laughter echoing across the field. They thought I was telling a joke. They thought I was just trying to act tough. But Zhang Jinghua didn't laugh. His eyes lit up. Most people couldn't sense my true level, but as a martial master, he could feel the truth. I wasn't joking. I was standing there so calmly because I had already surpassed everyone else here. Fine, Zhang Jinghua said, silencing the crowd. I allow it. Step up. I walked toward Lu Hai. He was still wearing that arrogant sneer, looking like he couldn't wait to beat me into the dirt. Wait, Zhang Jinghua added. Since I just taught you the crushing palm, I want both of you to use only that technique for this spar. I'll point out your mistakes afterward. I nodded and took my position. Lu Hai loosened his shoulders, shaking out his fists. The teacher told me to go easy on you, Lu Hai whispered, his voice low and nasty. But I'm not going to. If you want to apologize, do it now. It's your last chance. I looked at him, feeling nothing but boredom. Don't hold back. Use your full strength. My lack of reaction pissed him off. He hated that I wasn't afraid. He hated that I was looking at him like he was an ant. Fine. You asked for it. Lu Hai roared. His face twisted with rage as he gathered every ounce of his blood chi. I've reached the 6th stage of body refinement. If I break your bones, don't come crying to me. The students gasped again. The 6th stage? Lu Hai was even stronger than they thought. He looked like a prince of martial arts, confident and powerful. Are you ready? Lu Hai shouted. I'm coming for you. I just nodded. I didn't care if he was at the 6th stage or a full-fledged martial artist. To me, it made no difference. I decided to hold back my strength. If I used everything I had, I'd probably slap him into a red mist. Here I come. Lu Hai lunged. He vanished from his spot, charging at me with terrifying speed. His blood chi was concentrated entirely in his palm. Zhang Jinghua nodded in approval, impressed by the boy's form. The students braced themselves, expecting to see me fly through the air. Zhao Heng even looked away, unable to watch the disaster. Then, a loud crack shattered the silence. A figure was sent flying. He soared 10 meters through the air before slamming violently into the stone wall at the edge of the field. The entire class went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The person slumped against the wall wasn't me. It was Lu Hai. He was clutching his shattered hand, screaming in agony as he rolled on the ground. I hadn't even moved from my spot. Lu Hai gripped his shattered palm, rolling on the ground and howling in agony. His face was a mask of pure pain. I stood exactly where I had started. I hadn't shifted an inch. I felt perfectly relaxed, as if I had just swatted a fly. The training field fell into a deathly silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Every single eye was locked on me, wide with disbelief. Some students even rubbed their eyes, convinced they were hallucinating. I had sent Lu Hai flying with a single move. Was I actually a true martial artist? Even Zhang Jinghua stood there, frozen in shock. He was an expert. He could sense the blood chi I had just released. To him, it seemed like I was only at the 6th stage, roughly equal to Lu Hai. But my execution of the collapsing palm was different. It was flawless. It was seamless. It had reached the level of great perfection. He knew that only by mastering a technique to its absolute limit could someone unleash that kind of explosive power. That meant I had taken a powerful Tier 1 martial art and mastered it completely in just 1 hour. He realized then that I hadn't been lying. He hadn't misjudged my potential. He had vastly underestimated it. A common-grade talent couldn't do this. Even the top elite talents didn't have this kind of comprehension. A thought struck him. Maybe I had an extraordinary talent. Or maybe I was one of those 1-in-a-million geniuses born with dual talents. Such people existed in other major cities, but Star City had never seen one. Until now. Quick, Someone get Lu Hai to the infirmary. Zhang Jinghua barked, snapping everyone out of their trance. The students scrambled to help, but the way they looked at me had changed. The mockery was gone, replaced by pure awe and fear. Lu Hai, their golden boy, had been powerless against me. The top student was officially back. No, this can't be real, Wang Ying whispered. Her face was deathly pale. She looked like she was seeing a ghost. She couldn't accept it. We were both supposed to be common talents. How could I be this strong? Jealousy and resentment burned in her eyes, but I didn't give her a second thought. My other classmates were buzzing with excitement. They were already convinced my talent was at least excellent, maybe even higher. Wait, do you guys remember what happened at the park a few days ago? A girl named Lu Ling asked. She was one of my classmates. The students around her suddenly turned pale. They remembered the numbers on the testing machine that day. They looked at me again, their hearts racing. If that was true, I had been a martial artist days ago. How strong was I now? The thought was terrifying. Zhao Heng was the first to snap out of it. He grinned ear to ear and slapped my shoulder. Chen Fan, man, you better look out for me from now on. He wasn't afraid of my power. To him, I was just his best friend. I gave him a small smile. Chen Fan, that was a perfect level collapsing palm, Zhang Jinghua said, walking over with long, hurried strides. You really did learn it. His words sent a fresh wave of shock through the crowd. They looked at me like I was a literal monster. Learning such a difficult technique in minutes was supposed to be a fairy tale. It was beyond talented, it was freakish. Compared to me, even elite talents looked like jokes. The students stood there with their mouths hanging open, wide enough to fit an egg. Then, the silence broke into a roar of frantic discussion. How did he get so strong? He mastered a Tier 1 martial art in an hour. The craziest part is how he swatted Lu Hai like a bug. Yeah, Lu Hai is at the 6th stage. He's stronger than all of us. And he couldn't even take one hit. The realization started to sink in for everyone. They weren't just looking at a good student anymore. They were looking at a once-in-a-century monster. In their minds, there was only one explanation left. I had to be an extraordinary talent. Nothing else made sense. Learning high-level martial arts felt as easy as drinking water to me. My cultivation was skyrocketing, far surpassing anything an elite-grade talent could achieve. On the ground, Lu Hai finally groaned and blinked his eyes open. He looked dazed, his mind still reeling from the impact. He knew we had both used the collapsing palm, but he could feel that mine was on a completely different level. It was more profound, more mysterious, and infinitely more powerful. When our palms met, his bones had snapped instantly. He couldn't even lift his arm now. Thankfully, once a person awakens their talent, their physique becomes incredibly resilient. His bones would eventually knit back together, but his pride was shattered. As he lay there, he heard the whispers of the crowd. Everyone was praising me, treating him like nothing more than a stepping stone. He gritted his teeth, looking like he might spit blood from pure frustration. Chen Fan, you're strong, Lu Hai rasped, his voice weak but full of venom. I underestimated you. But beating me doesn't mean you can beat Wang Xiao. Just wait for the martial arts assessment. I'll make sure you learn what a real genius looks like. I looked down at him and let out a cold, dismissive laugh. Remember this, trash will always be trash. I didn't care about Wang Xiao. I didn't care about the so-called geniuses of the 36 cities. To me, an elite-grade talent was just a slightly better starting point. The gap between them and the top-tier monsters was massive. Even with all the resources in the world, Wang Xiao would likely only be at the mid-stage of the martial artist realm by the time of the assessment. I could handle him right now, let alone then. By the time the assessment rolled around, I would have mastered even more powerful techniques and broken through to the late stage. I might even be able to trade blows with a martial master. 2 students eventually stepped forward and carried the broken Lu Hai away. Chen Fan, come with me, Zhang Jinghua said. He had taught everything he needed to for this class, and he had no interest in watching the rest of the students spar. I nodded and followed him. Chen Fan, you're seriously incredible. Zhao Heng hurried alongside us, his eyes full of worship and genuine happiness. Did you really break through to become a martial artist already? Was the testing machine broken during the awakening ceremony? I looked at my best friend and patted his arm. I'll explain everything to you later. I have something important to handle right now. See you later. I followed Zhang Jinghua into his office. The moment the door closed, he turned to me, his eyes burning with intensity. Chen Fan, be honest with me, he demanded. What stage of the martial artist realm are you actually at? He didn't believe for a second that I was just a rank 1 martial artist. The blood chi he felt coming off me was too terrifying for that. I'm really just rank 1, I said, putting on my best innocent face. Maybe the physique I awakened is just naturally strong. It seems to give a massive boost to my blood chi. I wasn't lying. It was just a version of the truth. Zhang Jinghua was speechless. He had heard of talents that boosted blood chi, but never to this extreme. He gestured toward a testing device in the corner of the office. Fine. Test your strength for me. Right now. I stepped up and struck the machine. When the result flashed on the screen, Zhang Jinghua froze. His expression shifted from shock to joy, then to suspicion, as if he couldn't believe his own eyes. I hadn't even used a martial art technique, yet my combat power had hit a staggering 50,000. If you actually used a technique, Zhang Jinghua whispered, taking a deep breath to steady his racing heart. You could probably fight a late-stage martial artist. I was a bit surprised. I figured with my current techniques, I could hold my own against a rank 6 practitioner, a mid-stage fighter. I hadn't expected Zhang Jinghua to rank me even higher. It seemed I had underestimated myself. Normally, you'd need to be a rank 7 martial artist using full techniques to hit 50,000, Zhang Jinghua muttered, looking at me like I was a freak of nature. You're a monster. A total outlier. He knew his class had just produced a once-in-a-century genius. If I kept this up until the official assessment, I wouldn't just pass. I would shock the entire world. I might even have a chance to take the championship for Star City in the upcoming grand competition. Our school had truly found a treasure. Teacher, I actually have a request, I said, cutting through his excitement. I want a special permit to leave the city. I need to go to the second-tier wilderness to hunt beasts. The collapsing palm was strong, but I needed more. If I could hunt beasts and trade their materials for even higher-level techniques, I would become unstoppable. I was itching to get started. Zhang Jinghua jumped, looking startled. You want to go to the battlefield now? It's too dangerous, Chen Fan. Things change in an instant out there. Even if the strongest beasts in the second tier are only level 2, there are variations. If you run into a high-level rank 2 beast, you could die. He looked me in the eye, his expression grave. Are you absolutely sure you want to go? Yes, I replied. My voice was firm. There was no hesitation in my heart. Zhang Jinghua sighed and grabbed a piece of paper. He scribbled out a permit and stamped it with his official seal. Take it, but be careful. The world outside the walls isn't like the city. Danger is everywhere. Thank you, Teacher Zhang, I said, taking the paper. A smile spread across my face. Finally, I was heading out. Meanwhile, inside a luxury villa belonging to the Wang family, a handsome young man with long golden hair sat lazily on a sofa. He exuded an air of natural authority, looking down at the world with bored eyes. Lu Hai was kneeling on the floor in front of him, looking pathetic and beaten. Wang Xiao, please, give me one more chance. Lu Hai begged, his forehead touching the floor. I'll deal with Chen Fan, I promise. He clenched his fists so hard his nails drew blood, desperate for a nod of approval from the young man before him. I have no use for followers who are trash, Wang Xiao said. His voice was cold, distant, and utterly indifferent. Lu Hai had rushed here to report the news about my sudden rise in power, but Wang Xiao didn't care. To him, Lu Hai was just a mediocre talent who had failed. And as for me, I wasn't even on his radar yet. In his mind, I was just another name he didn't need to remember. To Wang Long, a follower like Lu Hai was replaceable. He could find a dozen more just like him whenever he wanted. If Lu Hai was useless, he was discarded. It was that simple. Lu Hai stayed on his knees, desperate to justify his failure. He told Wang Long that I had likely broken through to become a martial artist already. He claimed I must have found some incredible secret or hidden opportunity. He kept insisting that I was far stronger than him, so the defeat wasn't his fault. Wang Long didn't care. His eyes remained cold and indifferent. He told Lu Hai that he only looked at results, never the process. If a person was truly strong, it didn't matter how strong their opponent was. To him, I was just a small, insignificant name. I wasn't even worth his serious attention. Suddenly, an overwhelming pressure erupted from Wang Long's body. It was a domineering, suffocating aura that seemed to look down on everything under heaven. At that moment, he looked like a terrifying beast waking from a long slumber. His blood chi was staggering. Lu Hai felt like he was drowning. It was as if he had been dropped into the deepest part of the ocean, with miles of heavy water crushing down on his lungs. There was no oxygen, only weight. He felt like he was going to die right there on the floor. He had never felt such terrifying power from a student before. A moment later, Lu Hai gasped and spat a mouthful of blood. His eyes were wide with pure terror. He realized Wang Long had already reached the rank of martial artist. The aura was even more powerful than mine. He knew that if Wang Long wanted him dead, it would only take a single flick of a finger. Lu Hai couldn't even keep his own blood chi stable. He was just an ant, frozen by fear. Wang Long turned his back and looked out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city below. He spoke about his father providing him with massive amounts of resources. He wasn't going to waste them. His goal wasn't just to be the best in the city. He wanted to crush the top 10 geniuses of the 36 cities and take their place. His blood chi surged again, more violent than before. Lu Hai couldn't take it anymore. He collapsed, trembling uncontrollably. He didn't even have the strength to stand in Wang Long's presence. All his pride in his excellent grade talent was shattered. He was a waste. And in his twisted mind, he blamed everything on me. He hated me because he was too afraid to ever hate Wang Long. Meanwhile, back at the school, teacher Zhang Jinghua was sitting in the principal's office. The principal, a white-haired man named Wang, sipped from a thermos. He had heard the news about me defeating Lu Hai and asked if I was really that talented. Zhang Jinghua nodded with pride. He told the principal he suspected I had awakened a second talent. It was rare, but it was the only thing that made sense. Principal Wang looked surprised for a second, but he quickly calmed down. He asked if I had really reached the martial artist rank. Zhang Jinghua confirmed it. He told the principal that while I was only a rank 1 martial artist, my actual combat power was extraordinary. He kept the full extent of my strength a secret, though. He wanted me to be a dark horse, someone who would shock everyone at the upcoming assessment. Principal Wang saw right through him. He smiled, but then his expression turned serious. He dropped a bombshell that froze the smile on Zhang Jinghua's face. He told Zhang that another student, Lu Sheng, was already a rank 3 martial artist. And there was someone even more terrifying, Feng Chantian, the heir of the Feng family in Qing City. If Lu Sheng was a monster, Feng Chantian was a god. The principal believed Feng Chantian would definitely become a martial master before the exams even started. Compared to geniuses like that, even Wang Long looked average. The gap was simply too wide to imagine. While they were worrying about the competition, I was moving. I reached the second gate leading out of the city. This was the edge of the safe zone. I handed my permit to the soldiers at the gate. They checked the seal carefully, looking at me with shock. They couldn't believe a student was heading out into the wilderness alone. "Be careful out there, kid," one of the soldiers warned. "The second zone is dangerous." I thanked him and stepped through the gate. The world changed instantly. There were no paved roads here, just uneven dirt and wild grass. The air felt heavy and primal. I saw heavy fortifications on the walls and powerful warriors everywhere. These people were different from the ones inside the city. They carried a sharp, bloody aura, the mark of people who killed beasts for a living. I took a deep breath. My journey was finally beginning. I looked at the warriors around me and noticed the sharp, bloody aura they carried. When you kill enough, you start to carry that scent with you. In this era, we don't have a choice. We have to keep killing beasts because they are endless. No matter how many you slaughter, more appear to fill the gap. It's a simple rule of survival. If humans don't kill beasts, the beasts will kill us and turn us into food. But there's a silver lining. Their bodies provide materials for weapons and armor, which are true treasures. I looked toward a lush forest ahead, bordered by a clear river. Without hesitation, I started walking toward the tree line. I had come here to hunt. I stopped at the riverbank, feeling my mood lift as I watched the crystal-clear water flow. High above, the sun beat down on me, constantly pumping energy into my body. I checked my status and realized my energy had already reached 1,000 points. The familiar prompt flashed in my mind. I could break through again. It had only been 2 days. Usually, after traveling this far from the city, I would only have 600 or 700 points. I figured the sunlight must have been extra intense during my trek. I didn't dwell on the why for long. If I could get stronger, I was going to do it. I still felt like my current power wasn't enough for what was coming. I found a secluded, safe spot and sat down. I closed my eyes and focused. Immediately, my aura began to surge. It felt like golden flames were erupting across my skin, and the temperature in the clearing began to skyrocket. After 30 minutes, I stood up. I felt a bit taller, but the real change was in my blood chi. My raw physical strength had increased by 10,000 pounds. Even though I had only just reached the second stage of the martial artist realm, my actual combat power was now around 55,000. And that was without using any techniques. "Let's try the crumbling palm," I muttered. I thrust my hand forward, releasing a violent burst of energy. My palm slammed into a nearby stone cliff. The impact left a half-meter-deep print in the solid rock, and white smoke curled from the edges as if the stone had been seared by heat. The ground shook beneath my feet. Unlike my previous technique, the rolling rock fist, the crumbling palm was more comprehensive and carried far more destructive weight. As I pulled my hand back, a massive crack, dozens of meters long, spiderwebbed across the cliff face. A second later, the entire wall collapsed with a deafening roar. Dust filled the air. I tapped my toes against the ground and lightly leaped away from the debris. I exhaled slowly, a smile spreading across my face. This technique increased my power by about 50%. That meant that single strike had a combat value of over 82,000. If I hit a person with that, they'd be torn to pieces. If I hit a beast, it would be dead instantly. Satisfied, I headed deeper into the forest. I hadn't forgotten my goal. I needed to make money. Suddenly, a thunderous roar echoed through the trees. The sound was so powerful that the plants nearby trembled. It wasn't just a noise. It carried a terrifying pressure that made my heart race. A massive tiger with black stripes emerged. It was nearly the size of an elephant, radiating a thick, bloodthirsty aura. Opposite the tiger, a group of martial artists were in a desperate situation. There were 5 men and 1 woman, all looking pale with terror. A body lay on the ground between them, or what was left of one. It had been half-eaten, making it impossible to tell who it had been. The woman in the group stepped forward. She was dressed in black, with cold, refined features and a fit physique. But right now, her eyes were filled with nothing but fear. They were a hunting team, but they had run into a nightmare, a rank 2 beast called a ghost-faced tiger. These things were famous for their speed and lethal damage. The strongest person in their group was only at the 3rd stage of the martial artist realm. Even a 4th stage warrior would struggle against this beast. One of their friends had been killed instantly. They knew they couldn't win. As the group began to scatter in a desperate attempt to flee, the woman in black spotted me. She saw a young man, a student, really, standing right in the path of danger. "Run," she screamed at me. "It's a rank 2 ghost-faced tiger." I looked at the beast and felt a surge of excitement. "A ghost-faced tiger?" I repeated, my eyes lighting up. The woman looked at me like I was insane. These tigers were worth a lot of money, but I looked like I had just graduated high school. To her, I was probably at the 1st stage of refinement at best. Charging at this beast was suicide. She opened her mouth to yell again, but I was already gone. I vanished from her sight, blurring toward the tiger. She sighed and looked away, unable to watch the slaughter. But instead of a human scream, she heard a high-pitched wail of agony from the beast. The tiger's roar had changed from a threat to a plea for mercy. She turned back, her eyes widening in disbelief. I stood in the sunlight, my face calm and focused as I let out a cold shout. "Die!" With a heavy, muffled thud, the tiger's struggle ended. Everything went silent. I stood over the massive carcass, the sun shining down on me. My name is Chin Fan, and I had finally found my prey. I wiped the warm blood from my face and looked down at the dead tiger. Behind me, the group of warriors had stopped running. They turned around slowly, their throats moving as they swallowed hard. I could see the shock written all over their faces. To these ordinary warriors, a rank 2 ghost-faced tiger was a nightmare come true. It was the kind of monster that made their blood run cold just hearing its name. Yet, in front of me, it hadn't stood a chance. The fight had ended in a single heartbeat. The warriors stepped forward and bowed to me. Their eyes were full of deep respect. They didn't care how young I looked. All they knew was that I had just saved their lives. The woman in black stared at the tiger's forehead. It was a bloody mess of bone and brain matter. I had killed it with one strike. I could tell she was trying to process who I was. In her mind, I had to be one of those rare, elite prodigies from a major sect. Those people were usually legends to common warriors, figures they only heard about in stories. I looked at the carcass. The most valuable parts were the pelt and the beast core. I remembered reading that in my textbooks. I knelt down to start skinning it. The tiger's meat and bones were worth money too, but the beast was massive. I couldn't exactly carry a whole tiger on my back while I hunted. A single beast core was worth hundreds of thousands. If I sold that, the rest was just pocket change. Still, a top-tier Earth-grade martial arts manual cost millions. I needed more. I wasn't in a rush to leave just yet. Since I couldn't carry the meat, I decided to cook it right here. I looked at the group behind me. "Does anyone have a pot?" I asked. One of the men raised his hand. He pulled a large cooking pot out of his gear. It was perfect. The other warriors didn't wait to be asked. They immediately scrambled to find firewood. Soon, a fire was roaring. I used my knife to slice the tiger meat into chunks and toss them into the boiling water. The man with the pot even had salt and seasonings. I was a little surprised he was so well prepared. "Sir, may I ask your name?" the woman in black asked with a smile. "Chen Fan," I replied, dropping another piece of meat into the pot. "You're incredible, Chun Fan," another warrior added, his voice full of praise. "To kill a ghost-faced tiger at your age, it's amazing." They looked at me with pure envy and worship. Being a powerful warrior was everyone's dream. I didn't let it get to my head. To me, this was just one tiger. I needed to go deeper and find stronger prey. We finished butchering the beast. The tiger's skin was washed, and I held the beast core in my hand. It was about the size of a marble and glowed a deep, blood-red color. It was my first time seeing one. The warriors helped me with the heavy lifting. They were clearly experienced hunters. As we ate the soup, I learned they were a professional squad. They had planned to stay out here for months, but after this close call, they had enough loot to call it a day. They weren't willing to risk their lives anymore. After the meal, we parted ways. They headed back toward the safety of the city walls, while I pushed further into the dark woods. I walked for a long time, but the forest grew quiet. It seemed like the area had already been cleared of monsters. I frowned, unsure of which direction to take. There wasn't a soul in sight. Suddenly, a massive wild boar crashed through the brush. It was charging a young male warrior who was running for his life. "You still want to chase me? I'll kill you," the man yelled. He suddenly stopped and grinned. There was a loud crash as the ground gave way. The boar tumbled into a deep pit. It was a trap. The man didn't hesitate. He jumped down and finished the beast off with a clean strike. I watched from the shadows. The man was only at the 3rd stage of body refinement, yet he had just taken down a 4th stage beast using his wits. It was impressive. "Old Lu. Not bad." "Another kill," a voice called out. A group of about 10 warriors emerged from the trees. They all wore matching blue uniforms. They looked happy, but I could smell the scent of blood and battle on them. They were veterans. One of the men in blue spotted me. His expression shifted to confusion. "A 2nd stage warrior? How did he get all the way out here?" he muttered. Most of them were at the 4th or 5th stage. Old Lu was the only one at the 3rd stage, and he only kept up because he was a master of traps and scouting. I looked young, and I was alone. To them, I was either a hidden genius or a total idiot. The monsters here were at least level 4. An average person wouldn't last 10 minutes. A lean man, about 5'7", stepped toward me. He looked concerned. "Why are you here by yourself? You need to leave. This isn't the Outer Rim. It's dangerous." "I came here on purpose," I said calmly. I didn't move an inch. "Do any of you know where I can find stronger monsters?" The group went silent. They looked at me like I had lost my mind. "I'm telling you, kid, just leave," Old Lu said. He looked to be about 23. "Your cultivation is too low." Another man stepped forward. He wore the same blue uniform, but his hair was dyed a bright, rebellious red. He looked like a typical street punk. He gave me a cold stare. "If you're so hell-bent on dying, Just keep walking that way, he said, pointing deeper into the woods. You'll run into something powerful soon enough. It'll tear you into pieces before you can even scream. The man, who the others called Lu-E, was clearly trying to scare me off. But I didn't flinch. Instead, a wave of excitement washed over me. I cupped my hands in a respectful salute and thanked him. Louis froze. He looked confused, his eyes searching mine. I could tell what he was thinking. He started to wonder if I was hiding my true cultivation level. The other warriors in blue had the same suspicious looks on their faces. I didn't wait for them to change their minds. I turned and headed in the direction he pointed. I walked about 50 meters when a sudden, icy chill crawled up my spine. It was pure instinct. I spun around, and my heart skipped a beat. A beast emerged from the brush. It was 2 or 3 times larger than the ghost-faced tiger I had killed earlier. The aura radiating from it was suffocating. It was on a completely different level. It's a flame tiger, someone screamed. Run! The group of warriors, who had been secretly following me to watch the show, were now trembling. They didn't hesitate for a second. They turned tail and bolted. They didn't stop until they were hundreds of meters away. They leaned against trees, gasping for air, their hearts hammering against their ribs. They felt like they had just cheated death. How could a beast like that be here? Louis asked, his voice shaking. The others were just as shocked. A flame tiger, even a weak one, had the strength of a 6th-stage warrior. Even if their entire team fought together, they wouldn't stand a chance. They would just be appetizers. Who knows? One of them panted, looking back toward where I was. But that kid is done for. A 2nd-stage warrior against a flame tiger? He's already been shredded. We need to leave, another suggested. This area is the flame tiger's territory now. Anyone who stays is dead meat unless they're at the 6th stage or higher. Louis bit his lip. Despite his red hair and tough act, he had a good heart. He felt a heavy weight of guilt in his chest. He was the one who told me to go that way. You guys go ahead, Louis said. That kid died because of me. I want to go back and see if I can at least recover his body. Are you insane, Louis? His teammate yelled. It's a flame tiger. Even if you're fast, you're asking for death. Don't try to stop me, Louis said stubbornly. I'll just look from a distance. If it's too dangerous, I'll run immediately. A middle-aged man with a plain face and blood-stained clothes stepped out from the group. He was the strongest among them, a 5th-stage warrior and their leader. Fine, the leader said. If you're going, I'm going with you. The rest of you wait here. If we aren't back in 5 minutes, leave without us. Boss. Louis was moved. Stop being sentimental, the leader barked. If we wait any longer, there won't even be a corpse left to find. Meanwhile, I stood my ground, staring at the massive predator in front of me. Its fur was a deep, blood-red color that looked like flickering flames. I didn't feel like running. I felt alive. I cracked my neck and knuckles, the sound echoing in the quiet clearing. You're worth a lot more than that last tiger, I whispered, my eyes gleaming with excitement. I didn't actually know how strong I was yet, but I figured a flame tiger wouldn't be a problem. If things got ugly, I was confident I could get away. The tiger let out a deafening roar. The sound waves were so physical, I felt like my eardrums were going to burst. As I raised my hands to cover my ears, the tiger vanished from its spot. It launched itself at me with incredible speed, a bolt of black energy firing from its jaws. I moved like a bird, light and fast. I dodged the blast, my eyes turning cold. You asked for this, I muttered. I surged my blood chi into my palm. It turned a glowing, searing red, like a piece of hot iron. I didn't wait for it to strike again. I lunged forward, leaped high into the air, and came down right over its head. I didn't hold back. I slammed my palm down with every ounce of my strength. Crack! The sound of bone shattering filled the air. The tiger's skull fractured, a web of cracks spreading across its forehead. Dark red blood sprayed everywhere. The beast let out one final, desperate roar, struggling so hard the ground beneath us began to split like a spider web. Then, white smoke rose from the impact point on its head. The light faded from its eyes. The terrifying beast slumped to the ground, dead. It probably never realized that the weak human it tried to hunt was actually its executioner. I stood on top of the carcass and looked at the crater its attack had left in the dirt. Second-level beasts were tricky, They had more than just raw strength. If I hadn't been careful, that black light could have hurt. A flame tiger is worth about 1,000,000 credits, I said, a smile spreading across my face. Martial arts really was the way to wealth. My parents worked themselves to the bone to earn 15,000 a month. It would take them years to save 1,000,000. I had just made it in seconds. A few dozen yards away, Lu Yi and the leader stood frozen. They had seen the whole thing. Their faces were pale, their mouths hanging open. "Boss, how is that possible?" Louis stammered. The leader looked like he had seen a ghost. A second-stage warrior just one-shot a flame tiger. To do that, you'd need a combat power of at least 40,000. That kid, he's not just a warrior. He's a monster, a true genius. To the leader, I wasn't just a talented teenager. I was a peerless genius, a powerhouse who had likely hidden my true cultivation. He probably thought I was at least at the 7th stage of body refinement and was just suppressing my aura. To men like them, I was invincible. It explained why I was brave enough to venture into the wilderness alone. I wasn't reckless. I was just that confident. Old Lu's eyes were filled with pure envy. He had a common talent and had struggled for years just to become a basic warrior. A top-tier elite genius like me was someone he usually wouldn't even have the right to speak to. I didn't care what they were thinking. I just waved them over. "Do either of you know how to butcher a flame tiger?" I asked. They blinked, looking at each other. "We don't really know how," the leader admitted. "But someone in our squad specializes in it. I'll go grab him." The man hurried off and returned a few minutes later with the rest of his team. That night, we sat around a warm campfire. The orange light flickered across everyone's faces as a massive pot bubbled over the flames. The smell of stewed tiger meat filled the air. The other warriors looked like they were in a dream. Eating the meat of a flame tiger was something they had never even dared to imagine before today. I sat near the pot with my eyes closed. My breathing was steady, but inside, my aura was surging, climbing higher with every second. Suddenly, a low vibration shook the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust around me. I opened my eyes. I had just broken through right in front of them. To the others, I still felt like a third-stage warrior, but they were convinced it was a disguise. No actual third-stage student could be this terrifying. They recognized the move I had used, too. The crushing palm was a basic, entry-level martial art that almost every warrior owned a copy of. But seeing the power I had unleashed with it was haunting. "He broke through again," the leader whispered, his expression grave. "That aura is incredible." He stared at me with total awe. He couldn't believe he had stumbled upon such a monster in the middle of nowhere. Looking at how young I was, he guessed I hadn't even taken the official warrior assessment yet. If I showed up there, I would probably shake all 36 cities to their core. "Thank you," I said, looking at the tiger's skin and the beast core they had laid out for me. They had even served me a bowl of the fragrant meat. If I had tried to butcher that tiger myself, it would have taken hours. "You're too kind, sir," one of the blue-clad warriors said, his voice full of genuine respect. In this era, the strong were idols. Warriors who fought on the front lines against beasts were heroes to be celebrated. Even though I was younger than them, they admired me from the bottom of their hearts. They probably thought I'd be a great grandmaster one day, someone they'd only see on TV. I noticed they were acting a bit stiff. "Don't be so formal," I said, digging into the meat. "Sit down and eat." They finally started eating. The night was cold, but the tiger meat sent a wave of warmth through everyone's bodies, slightly improving their constitutions. For me, it didn't do much besides satisfying my hunger. I needed more than just food to level up now. When morning came, I packed the beast core and the tiger's skin. I was ready to head deeper into the forest to hunt more. Before I left, I turned back to the leader. "Do you know the current price for Tier 1 martial arts manuals?" I had read about it in books, but these guys were on the front lines. They'd know if the market had changed. "As far as I know," the leader said, "the cheapest ones are around 1.5 million credits. The better ones go for up to 3 million. I nodded. If I could make another million soon, I'd be set. I waved goodbye and disappeared into the dense trees. Half a day later, back in Star City, a piece of news exploded onto the top of the trending charts. The headline read, "Asterisk a genius rivaling the top 10? One-shot kill on a flame tiger. Asterisk." There was a photo attached. It showed a blurry silhouette of a young man standing over a massive carcass. Everyone with a phone clicked on it. Is this real? It looks photoshopped, one comment read. The description says he's barely 18. That's insane. Killing a second-level beast at that age? A dark horse has appeared for this year's assessment. I wonder what the top 10 geniuses think about this. The comments flooded in by the thousands. Meanwhile, at the Wang family estate, Wang Long sat with a glass of red wine. His golden hair caught the light as he scrolled through his phone. He saw the headline and scoffed. Killing a flame tiger? Big deal. He closed the app, unimpressed. He could do that too. He just didn't feel the need to brag about it online. To him, the person in the photo was just a pathetic attention seeker who had paid for a fake trending spot. The photo was too blurry to prove anything. To Wang Long, anyone who resorted to these stunts would become a laughingstock once the real exam started. Across the city, the other members of the top 10 geniuses saw the post and felt the same way. They were all incredibly confident, each believing they were the one destined to win. Even if Feng Xiaotian had the highest raw talent, the others felt that with enough resources, they could bridge the gap. With the rewards for this year's assessment being higher than ever, they were all buried in their training, determined to shine and earn a spot in the 10 great academies. 2 days passed, and the news of the mysterious genius slowly faded from the hot search list. But in the shadows of the forest, I was just getting started. New trending topics eventually pushed the mysterious dark horse off the hot search lists. People stopped talking about me, and the hype slowly died down. That was exactly what I wanted. I walked into the Baida trading house, a massive commercial hub with branches in almost every human city. I looked young, but I carried a heavy, suffocating aura of bloodlust. It was a lingering scent from the slaughter in the forest. Ordinary people flinched as I passed, their eyes filled with fear and hesitation. I didn't say a word. I just carried my heavy bundle toward the front desk. A young woman in her early 20s sat there, dressed in a professional black dress and high heels. She offered a polite smile, but I noticed her legs were trembling. To her, I didn't look like a student. I looked like a wild beast in human skin. She was terrified, yet her training forced her to stay put. Can you make decisions here? I asked. My voice was calm, but sharp. She forced a smile. If the value is under 1 million, I can handle it. Then go get your manager, I said. I pulled up a chair and sat down to wait. She didn't hesitate. She scrambled away as fast as her heels would allow. I looked around, noticing how everyone was giving me a wide berth. I realized my time in the deep forest had changed me. I had killed several powerful beasts since the flame tiger, and their essence was still clinging to me. The loot in my bag was easily worth over 3 million. I wasn't here just for money. I wanted a powerful Earth-grade martial art. Baida Trading House was famous for having everything, backed by a mysterious power that some rumored to be a venerable level master. Nobody dared to cause trouble here. After 3 minutes, a man in his 30s rushed out. He wore a neat black suit and looked like an insurance salesman, but his eyes were sharp. He was a powerful martial artist and a professional appraiser. My young friend looks extraordinary, he said with a warm smile. What do you have for us today? I didn't waste time. I opened my bundle. Beast cores, claws, and high-quality pelts spilled out. The manager's expression turned serious. He began the appraisal with practiced movements. Flame Tiger Core, 1 million. The pelt, another 100,000. A second-level Frenzied Rhino Core, that's 1.2 million. He went through the entire pile. When he finished, he looked at me with newfound respect. The total value is 6 million. Does that work for you? His tone had shifted from polite to genuinely respectful. He knew these beasts were vicious killers. To see a teenager bring in such a haul was staggering. He likely suspected I was the mysterious genius from the news. I'm satisfied, I said. But don't pay me yet. I want to buy a high-level Earth-grade martial art. What do you recommend? Money was just a tool. Strength was what mattered. The manager's enthusiasm spiked. He personally led me to their private collection, showing me over 1,000 different techniques. An hour later, I walked out of the store. My bank account only had 50,000 credits left. I had spent 5.5 million in a single sitting. 5 million went toward an Earth-grade technique called the 9 Flame Slashes. The other 500,000 went toward a heart-calming pill. I needed that pill to wash away the murderous aura clinging to me. If I went home looking like a cold-blooded killer, my parents would lose their minds. I didn't go back to school. Instead, I headed straight out of the city gates. I needed to see what 5 million credits actually bought me. I found a secluded spot and began practicing the 9 flame slashes. It was a complex technique consisting of 9 distinct forms. Each strike built upon the last, stacking power until the 9th slash reached a terrifying peak. It was one of the top Earth-grade skills for a reason. It took me half a day of intense focus, but I pushed through until I reached perfection. I let my blood chi explode. Golden flames surged from my palms, condensing into a meter-long blade of pure energy. It hummed with a dangerous heat. I swung. The ground shattered, leaving a 5-meter-long crack in the earth. The entire area shook like a minor earthquake. I did the math. My base combat power was around 60,000. The first slash alone added 10,000 to that. By the time I reached the final form, even if the power didn't double, I could hit a peak of 150,000 combat power. That was enough to trade blows with a martial grandmaster. However, I felt the drain. My blood chi was still too low to sustain the final slashes for long. I needed to break through to the next realm. And the best way to do that, besides fighting, was my specialty. I swallowed the heart-calming pill. As the cool sensation spread through my chest, the dark, murderous aura began to fade. My mind cleared. I looked up at the sky. The sun felt warmer out here than it did behind the city walls. The energy absorption was faster. I found the brightest, most sun-drenched spot on the hillside and sat down. It was time to grow. After a full day of soaking up the sun, I finally stored enough energy to push through. My breath steadied as I broke through to the 4th stage of the martial artist realm. My combat power jumped by another 5,000, giving me an extra 10,000 pounds of raw strength. I was still outside the city walls. I wasn't looking for a fight, but a few brainless beasts decided to test their luck. I took them out with the simplest moves I knew. I didn't even look back at the bodies. This was just the outer zone, and their materials weren't worth the effort of carrying them. That night, I headed back into the city to fill my stomach. I planned to visit my parents the next morning before packing enough supplies to stay in the wild for a long stretch. It was Sunday when I walked through the front door. I knew my parents would be home. My mother's face lit up the second she saw me. She scolded me for not calling ahead so she could prepare a proper feast. My father was just as happy. They immediately rushed out to the market to buy ingredients. They didn't trust restaurant food to give me the nutrition I needed. While they were gone, I sat on the sofa and flipped through the TV channels. Eventually, I wandered onto the balcony to catch the afternoon rays. I could feel the energy coursing through me, thick and heavy. It felt surreal. I looked down at my hands. My skin was tighter, smoother, and more translucent than white jade. My sister, Chen Shui, walked in and gave me a quick wave. She looked bright and full of life in her long skirt and pink butterfly hair clip. My parents returned lugging heavy bags of food. 2 hours later, the table was covered in 10 different dishes. The smell was incredible. My mother kept piling beef onto my plate since she knew it was my favorite. I ate, but the food didn't satisfy my hunger like it used to. A high-level martial artist needs massive amounts of energy. I ended up polishing off 8 bowls of rice. Chen Shui stared at me like I was a monster. She asked if I hadn't eaten in weeks. My mother looked worried, asking if I was out of money. I thought about the hundreds of thousands sitting in my bank account and shook my head. I told them I had plenty of money from my scholarship and that hunting beasts would bring in millions soon enough. I didn't want them to worry. My father, usually a man of few words when food was involved, looked up and told me to ask if I ever needed cash. My mother immediately suspected he had a secret stash of money hidden away. The bickering started, and Chen Shui joined in, demanding her own allowance. I just sat there and smiled. This was the kind of warmth I wanted to protect. I stayed the night and left the next morning. I told them I wouldn't be back until after the official martial arts assessment. Back in the wild, the sun was brutal. The temperature hit over 50 degrees Celsius. A normal person would have collapsed from heat stroke in minutes. But for me, it was fuel. My cultivation speed reached new heights. For 20 days, I lived in a cycle of sunbathing, eating, and killing beasts. By the end of it, my aura was terrifying. From a distance, I probably looked like a human furnace radiating waves of heat. I closed my eyes and whispered the word. Breakthrough. Pure, refined energy flooded my limbs, washing through my body over and over. I had already reached the 10th stage of the martial artist realm, giving me a base combat power of 100,000. But now, I was pushing into the martial master realm. The process took half a day. When the surge finally stopped, I opened my eyes and clenched my fists. I felt invincible. My combat power had doubled to 200,000. I had 400,000 pounds of strength in my arms. I exhaled a cloud of murky air and noticed my skin was covered in a layer of black, oily impurities. Reaching the martial master realm had literally cleansed my marrow. I decided to test the 9 flame slashes again. I condensed a blade of fire that stretched 3 meters long. The heat was intense. The first slash now carried 250,000 points of combat power. By the time I reached the final form, the power would hit 450,000. I thought back to my teacher, Zhang Jinghua. I used to think he was an untouchable peak, but now I realized my blood chi was already closing in on his level. Suddenly, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a headline flashing on the screen. The martial arts assessment was officially beginning. The whole world was watching. I didn't even bother clicking the link. It was time to show them what I could do. I didn't waste any time. I headed straight for Star City, the designated location for this year's martial arts assessment. The city was already buzzing. A massive, oval-shaped plaza had been transformed into the testing grounds, divided into sections covered in soft carpets and filled with high-tech machines designed to measure combat strength. The crowd was immense, a literal sea of people whispering in anticipation. Contenders from every neighboring city were converging on the plaza. The media was in a frenzy, especially around the 10 great geniuses. Feng Chantian, the top-rated talent from the Feng family, was the man everyone wanted to see. Reporters swarmed the gates of these young elites, cameras flashing and microphones shoved in their faces. The level of public interest was unprecedented. As the morning sun finally tore through the heavy clouds, its golden light spilled over the city walls. I walked toward the gates, my black and white casual clothes fluttering in the breeze. I looked like any other teenager, but there was something different in my eyes. If someone looked too closely, they would see a sharp, predatory glint that would make their skin crawl, like a commoner facing a wild beast. The guards at the gate watched me pass without a word. Once I was out of earshot, they started whispering. They had seen me leave and enter the city dozens of times recently. They assumed I was a hardened warrior who spent my days hunting monsters outside the walls. To them, I was either a madman or a hero. To me, hunting monsters was as simple as drinking water. My first stop wasn't the plaza, it was home. This was a massive milestone, and I wanted to go with my family. I found my parents and my sister, Chen Shui, waiting for me outside our building. My father was sharp in a suit, my mother wore a bright red dress, and Chen Shui looked lovely in a pink gown with black leather shoes and white socks. "You look beautiful today," I said with a smile. Chen Shui blinked, stunned. I rarely gave her compliments. She shook off the surprise and pumped her fist in the air. "You have to work hard too, brother. Do your best." I nodded, my smile widening. "Actually, everyone else is the one who needs to work hard. I'm going to take first place in this assessment." Chen Shui went silent. She looked at me like I had lost my mind. I could tell she thought I was being delusional, but she didn't want to crush my confidence. My father, however, let out a booming laugh. "That's my son. That's the spirit." Big words, Chen Fan, a cold voice interrupted. It was Lu Lin, our neighbor's son. He had been training like a demon and had finally broken through to become an official martial artist. He knew he was far behind the top geniuses, many of whom were already martial masters, but he still looked down on me. "You need to learn the difference between reality and your dreams," old Lu added, shaking his head with a smirk. His wife stood beside him, looking at me as if I were a tragic joke. My parents looked annoyed. The Lu family used to be good neighbors, but ever since Lu Lin showed talent, they acted like they were royalty. They spoke to us with a condescending tone, and the other neighbors just nodded along, knowing the Lu family was moving up in the world. Lu Lin didn't even bother arguing further. He had spent his time ignoring his friends and even his girlfriend to focus on cultivation. He was already planning to dump her once he passed the exam. He felt they belonged to different worlds now. He was going to live a long life as a warrior, while she would just grow old and gray. I didn't bother explaining myself to them. I didn't care what they thought. Life is too short to worry about the opinions of people who don't matter. I looked at my parents and ignored the neighbors entirely. "Mom, Dad," I said firmly. "Let's go." A horn blared in the distance. A large bus pulled up outside the residential complex, its brakes hissing as it came to a halt. This was the transport for the students and parents heading to the martial arts assessment. Everyone began to board. A man with a megaphone stood by the door, shouting instructions to the crowd. Today was a massive event. It was so significant that most companies had given their employees the day off. The streets were quiet, but the atmosphere near the bus was electric. We lined up in an orderly fashion, filed into our seats, and felt the engine rumble to life as the driver hit the gas. Inside the bus, the air was thick with anxiety. Students whispered to each other, their voices trembling with uncertainty. I watched as most of them closed their eyes, hands pressed together in silent prayer. They were begging for a miracle. But I knew the truth. Prayer was just a comfort for the weak. To pass this exam, you needed to reach the martial artist realm or possess equivalent combat power. Most of these kids hadn't even come close. The bus stopped again a few blocks away to pick up more people. A familiar face appeared in the aisle. When he saw me, his face lit up with a wide grin. He didn't hesitate and slid into the seat right next to me. "Zhao Heng," I said, offering a small smile. "Where have you been, Chun Fan?" he grumbled, settling in. "I wanted to call you to play some games, but you were nowhere to be found." I looked at him, surprised by his casual attitude. "How can you be so cheerful? Aren't you worried about the assessment? This day decides our entire lives. If we passed, we would be sent to the battlefield to kill mutated beasts." The survival rate was low, but even then, many chose that path. For those with ordinary talent, killing beasts was the only way to get resources and grow stronger. Once you've seen the power of a true master, you can't go back to being a nobody. It was like seeing the light for the first time. You could never be satisfied with the darkness again. Zhao Heng shrugged, his expression turning philosophical. "What's the point of worrying? If I pass, I pass. If I don't, I don't." He knew the odds. Out of 10,000 applicants, maybe 500 would actually become martial artists. Those with elite talent were a tiny minority. For someone like him, with common talent, the gates were likely closed. He figured he might as well enjoy his life while he could. He dreamed of being recruited by a dojo or even opening a small one of his own, but he knew how hard that was. "Sometimes, you just have to accept your fate," he said. He let out a heavy sigh. There was longing in his eyes, but it was buried under a mountain of disappointment. I understood that look. If I hadn't awakened my system, I would be sitting there feeling that same crushing despair. I would be just as resigned to a life of mediocrity. "You're right," I nodded. "But let's not talk about depressing things. Maybe we'll end up on the battlefield together. We can kill beasts as a team. We might actually make something of ourselves." I wanted to tell him that I probably wouldn't be heading to the front lines as a foot soldier, but I was interrupted. A young man with a cocky, arrogant expression walked down the aisle. He took a seat directly behind us. "Well, if it isn't Chun Fan," he sneered. He stood up, looking down at me with a mocking grin. This was Wang Kai. He had short black hair, wore dark sunglasses, and dressed in all black. He looked like he thought he was the protagonist of his own movie. "I heard you taught Lu Hai a lesson," Wang Kai said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That loser wasn't fit to follow my cousin anyway, so he's been kicked out. But you offended my brother. I'm going to give you a real education during this assessment." I didn't even flinch. I knew who he was, Wang Long's cousin. He had excellent grade talent, but to me, he was just another loudmouth. "A lapdog talks pretty big," I said, my voice cold. "But a waste is still a waste." Wang Kai's face turned bright red. He looked like he was about to swing at me right there, but he caught himself. If he started a fight today, he'd be disqualified before the bus even reached the testing center. He took a deep breath, glaring at me through his shades. "Chun Fan, you're still as arrogant as ever." A calm, level voice cut through the tension. Everyone's eyes shifted toward the front of the bus. A teenager in a sharp black suit was walking toward us. He had long, silky golden hair and eyes that seemed to pierce through everything they landed on. A luxury watch glinted on his wrist. He looked incredibly wealthy. Usually, someone like him would have a private car, But for the assessment, everyone had to take the official transport. This was Wang Long. He possessed elite grade talent, and the blood chi radiating from him was staggering. I could feel the other students shrinking back as he passed. Even Lu Lin, who had been so proud earlier, looked stunned. The gap in power was obvious to everyone. Arrogance is fine, Wang Long said, stopping near my seat. But only if you have the strength to back it up. You don't. He didn't wait for a reply. He walked past me and took a seat further back. He was even more conceited than his cousin. After dropping that one insult, he completely ignored the rest of the bus, looking like he couldn't be bothered by the presence of commoners. Cousin, Wang Kai called out, his tough guy act instantly turning into a sycophantic grin as he hurried to sit near Wang Long. As the bus continued its route, more people boarded. Several of them immediately gravitated toward Wang Long. They were his followers, most of them boasting excellent grade talent. Boss, one of them said, leaning in. He had long black hair and a somewhat feminine face. His name was Chu Chuan. That guy in the front, Chen Fan. I heard he crossed you. Want us to go handle him for you. Chu Chuan was confident he'd pass the exam, but he knew Wang Long was on a different level. He wanted to secure his spot as a loyal subordinate. Wang Long didn't even look at him. Do whatever you want after the assessment, he said indifferently. Don't bother me with such small things. My only targets are the 10 great geniuses. A nobody doesn't deserve my attention. He spoke with total conviction, as if my existence was beneath his notice. Chu Chuan nodded eagerly, a cruel smile forming on his face. I sat in my seat, listening to them plot my downfall as if I weren't even there. I didn't get angry. I actually felt like laughing. They were so sure of themselves. They had no idea that the roles of hunter and prey were about to be reversed. To me, Wang Long wasn't a threat. He was just another stepping stone. My goals were exactly the same as Wang Long's. I wanted to be among the 10 great geniuses. Actually, I wanted the top spot. The only person I really needed to watch out for was Feng Changtian. As for the rest of them, I felt confident I could take them down. The bus pulled up to the testing grounds shortly after. We stepped out and I saw rows of flags flapping in the wind, each marked with the name of a different school. We headed toward the banner for Xingqing No. 1 High School. A massive crowd of students had already gathered there. We blended into the sea of people. Aside from Wang Long drawing eyes and the teachers acting extra friendly toward him, the rest of us were mostly ignored. I spotted my parents and my sister, Chen Shui, in the spectator stands on a different level. Since they weren't participating in the martial arts assessment, they were kept separate from the candidates. Suddenly, a gasp rippled through the crowd. Everyone's eyes locked onto a young man walking by. He didn't say a word, yet he commanded the attention of the entire plaza. That was Ying Baishe, one of the top geniuses in Xingqing. Before the excitement could die down, another wave of shouts broke out. This person drew even more attention. He was ranked 5th among the 10 great geniuses. He was tall and built like a tank, his skin and muscles looking as hard as bone. The blood chi radiating off him was so intense, he felt like a predatory beast. His name was Bai Chiyue. Then, a girl with striking blue hair appeared. She was breathtakingly beautiful, with skin as white as snow. She looked like a goddess who had descended from the heavens. I'd heard she had countless admirers at school, but today she was strictly business, dressed in a blue school uniform. She was ranked 3rd and had reportedly awakened a supernatural talent. She was destined to become a powerhouse. Finally, a lazy-looking teenager stepped into view. He wore a red and white uniform and looked completely bored, as if nothing in the world could interest him. The moment he appeared, everyone else seemed to fade into the background. He possessed a top-tier supernatural talent, the kind seen only once a century. Everyone knew he was a lock for one of the 10 great academies. That's Feng Changtian, Zhao Heng whispered beside me, his eyes full of envy. He really does have an incredible aura. Zhao Heng went on to explain that for this 36-level assessment, the top 5 finishers would be invited to a special training camp. They'd receive C-rank martial arts techniques and resources that regular schools couldn't even dream of. It was the fast track to the 10 great academies, the holy lands of humanity. While people argued about who would take the other spots, no one doubted Feng Changtian. The internet was already calling him the guaranteed champion. A C-rank martial arts technique? That caught my attention. My current skills were good, but I wasn't going to turn down something more powerful. More importantly, I wanted those elite cultivation resources. About half an hour later, a teacher walked over and told us to line up. It was the time for the assessment to begin. We followed him to a massive plaza lined with 9 huge gates. Each entrance was packed with people, and soldiers were stationed everywhere to keep order. We queued up, grabbed our entry numbers, and waited. I was number 1000. Zhao Heng was 1001. Up ahead, a boy stepped onto the platform for the combat power test. He struck the machine and then walked away, looking devastated. His score was 3000. The female examiner didn't even need to speak. The giant LCD screen displayed his failure for everyone to see. You needed 5000 to pass. It looks like we have no hope, someone muttered nearby, his fists clenched in frustration. The atmosphere grew heavy as student after student failed. The requirement was just too high for most. Passed, the examiner finally called out. I looked up and saw Wang Kai standing there with a smug grin. He shot me a provocative look, but I ignored him. The other students looked at him with pure jealousy, wishing they were in his shoes. The testing continued, but the success rate was dismal. Out of 100 people, only 5 managed to hit the mark. The examiner shook her head, clearly disappointed by the quality of this year's batch. But then, Wang Long stepped up. He wasn't wearing a school uniform, opting for a sharp black suit instead. He looked completely out of place, but as he approached the machine, nobody cared about his clothes anymore. They were all waiting to see what a real genius could do. On the day of the assessment, the rules were loose. You could wear your school uniform if you wanted to, or not. It all depended on your mood. Wang Long stepped up to the machine with a face like stone. He didn't say a word. He just threw a punch. Boom. The impact echoed across the plaza. Bright red text immediately flashed on the screen, 50,000. The examiner jumped, her eyes widening as she took a second look at him. A score of 5,000 was a pass, but he had cleared it 10 times over. Pass, she said, handing him a token. Next stage. Wang Long took the token and walked down without a single change in his expression. The crowd, however, absolutely lost it. People were shouting, their voices filled with shock. He had made it look so easy, like he wasn't even trying. He became the instant center of attention, a monster among men. After that, the testing slowed down. Most students barely scraped by, their scores hovering just above the 5,000 mark. Even more failed entirely, walking away with their heads hanging low. Where's Lu Sheng? Someone asked, looking around. If Wang Long is this crazy, I want to see how terrifying Lu Sheng is. Don't bother looking, another student explained. The top 10 geniuses have their own testing area. They don't even have to do this first round, they get a free pass. I heard the envy in their voices. While we were all sweating in line, the elites were already through. It felt unfair, but nobody complained out loud. Everyone knew those 10 were on a different level. Boom. Another heavy explosion rocked the platform. I looked up and saw a boy with bright red hair. He wasn't wearing a uniform either. That's Bai Guiyuan from 3rd High, someone whispered. He was a fire element elite. Those types of talents naturally boosted blood chi and combat power. Watching him, the atmosphere among the regular students turned sour. We were just background noise compared to these people. I heard guys with excellent talents muttering that they felt like trash. It was the difference between a firefly and the moon. The examiner's mood started to shift. She had been disappointed earlier, but after seeing 9 geniuses in a row, her eyes lit up. This year's batch was significantly better than the last. She was actually looking hopeful now, waiting for a real miracle to happen. I don't think I should even go up there, Zhao Heng whispered beside me. He looked devastated. He had tested himself yesterday and barely hit 3,000. He knew he was going to fail. I didn't say anything. I just watched. To everyone else, these geniuses were gods. To me, they were just background characters. They were hitting 50,000. I had passed that mark ages ago. Now that my blood chi had surged, I was miles beyond that. Finally, Zhao Heng's number was called. He went up, failed just like he expected, and walked back down with a hollow look in his eyes. Number 1001, step up, the examiner called out. I walked onto the stage, calm and steady. The examiner glanced at her tablet, checking my profile to make sure I was who I said I was. The rules are simple, she said, her voice bored. 3 tries. Use any technique you want. I'll take the average. Or, if you're confident, just hit it once. You can also forfeit. I nodded. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't excited. I was just ready. The examiner looked me over one last time. She noted my face. I was handsome, sure, but my blood chi felt average to her. My file said I had a common talent. In her eyes, I was just another kid destined for the front lines who wouldn't last a week. Start when you're ready, she sighed, waving her hand dismissively. I took a deep breath. I centered myself, feeling the massive reservoir of energy inside my body. I didn't use a special technique. I just pulled back my fist and let it fly. Bang! I didn't move an inch after the strike. The LCD screen flickered to life. The numbers started spinning so fast they were a blur. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. The examiner, who had been looking away, suddenly froze. Her head snapped toward the screen. I had already passed, but the numbers weren't slowing down. 20,000, 40,000, 50,000. It hit Wang Long's score and kept climbing. The examiner's bored expression turned into pure shock. She looked at my file again. Common talent, it didn't make sense. I hadn't held back. I wanted to see what I could actually do. I wasn't even using a martial arts skill, just raw, unfiltered power. Asterisk beep, 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 asterisk. The machine hit 100,000. The lights began to flash violently. Smoke started pouring out of the casing. Boom. The testing machine exploded right in front of us. The entire plaza went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Hundreds of students stared at my back, their eyes wide, their mouths hanging open. 50,000 was a genius. But 100,000? And I broke the machine? Down in the crowd, Zhao Heng looked like he was seeing a ghost. He thought I was just a guy who was good at studying books. He had no idea he was standing next to a monster. I stood there in the silence, the smell of burnt electronics filling my nose. I knew some people learn martial arts faster than others, but this was different. When I had told Zhao Heng I'd become a real warrior, he thought I was just joking around. Now, looking at the wreckage of the machine, the reality was hitting him like a freight train. Over 100,000 combat power. That wasn't just a student's score, that was the level of a seasoned martial master. I saw Zhao Heng below the stage, wearing a bitter, self-deprecating smile. He probably felt like a clown for all the advice he'd given me earlier. But beneath the shock, I could see he was genuinely happy for me. Having a monster for a best friend meant he might actually have a bright future just by association. A real dark horse has appeared, one of the top-tier geniuses muttered. He had a combat power of 50,000 and an excellent grade talent, so he understood the gap better than anyone. 100,000 wasn't just double his score, it was a level of power that could kill him in a single heartbeat. To him, I wasn't just a genius, I was a freak of nature. Stop acting like he's a god, a voice sneered. It was by Guiyuan, a red-haired genius who looked at me with pure contempt. The machine obviously malfunctioned. I know this guy. He's a nerd from Xingqing High School. He only has common grade talent. His real power is probably barely 10,000. A wave of relief washed over the other students. That made sense. A machine error was much easier to swallow than a nobody suddenly becoming a god. Even Wang Long, the #1 seed, remained calm. He didn't even look at me. It was as if nothing in this world was worth his attention. Testing is suspended, the female examiner shouted. She agreed with the crowd. There was no way a common grade talent could do this. She left and returned quickly with a heavy-duty replacement. This is a new model, she announced, her voice echoing across the plaza. It can measure up to 300,000 combat power. Chen Fan, test again. I looked at the new machine and hesitated. I had planned to go all out and use my strongest skill, the 9-flame slash. But if I stacked my power, I knew this machine would end up as scrap metal too. I didn't want to delay the entire exam. I took a deep breath, stepped up, and threw a casual punch. I didn't even use half my strength. The screen flickered. The numbers climbed steadily until they settled into a bright, blood-red glow. 110,000. The plaza went dead silent again. You could argue the first machine was broken, but 2? That was impossible. How? How is this possible? The examiner stammered. She looked at my file, then back at the screen. Even with a lucky break, no one with common grade talent should be able to cultivate this fast in just 1 month. The commotion drew in the other 8 examiners from across the plaza. They gathered around, their eyes wide with excitement. They thought they had discovered a hidden dragon, a dark horse who could break into the top 5 of the entire province. More geniuses meant better rewards for them. But then, one of the examiners, a woman in her 30s with short hair, a sharp suit, and black-rimmed glasses, let out a long, disappointed sigh. She looked at my talent evaluation and shook her head. "He only has common grade talent," she said, her voice dropping all the excitement. The other examiners leaned in to check. One by one, their faces fell. The spark of interest in their eyes vanished instantly. "What a waste," one muttered, turning away. "Examiner," a student shouted from the crowd. "Why does it matter if his talent is common? He just hit 110,000. Why are you disappointed?" The woman in the glasses looked down at the students. "Fine, I'll explain it to you. You all know the talent ranks, but you don't understand what they actually mean. Talent is your ceiling. A person with common grade talent can, at best, become a martial master. Unless they find a miracle of biblical proportions, they will never reach the rank of Grandmaster." She pointed at me, though she didn't even look me in the eye. Chun Fan clearly found some kind of treasure or medicine to boost his strength. But he's reached his limit. His potential is tapped out. From here on, his progress will be painfully slow. Meanwhile, someone with excellent grade talent will breeze past him without even trying. He's a flash in the pan, nothing more. Elite talent was a guaranteed ticket to becoming a Grandmaster. The best of them could even reach the rank of Great Grandmaster. These people didn't need to hunt for luck or search for hidden treasures. Their own talent was the greatest miracle they could ever possess. The examiner looked at me with pity. She said that while someone with common talent might shine brightly for a moment, time would eventually catch up. People like that always faded back into the crowd. She told us this wasn't just her opinion. It was a recorded fact. She brought up a name that made the crowd go quiet: Zhang Ai. Everyone had heard of him. A few years ago, he was a legend, a star who had fought his way into a top-tier academy. Back then, people called him the Light of Star City. They expected him to become a great Grandmaster. But the reality was grim. Years had passed, and Zhang Ai was still just a martial master. The peers he had once crushed during his exams had all surpassed him. They were Grandmasters now. The gap in talent had finally shown its teeth. It turned out that Zhang Ai had found a rare heavenly treasure before his assessment. He swallowed it, his blood chi spiked, and his combat power exploded. He looked like a god among men for a single day. But after that initial boost, his progress stopped completely. He had spent years standing still while the world moved past him. The students around me were stunned. The silence in the room was heavy. They finally understood that in this world, talent was everything. Without it, even a head start was just a temporary illusion. I listened to her speech and felt a smirk tugging at the corners of my mouth. I felt a sense of pure disdain. If I actually had common grade talent, I might have been devastated by her words. I might have felt my future crumbling. But I knew the truth. I wasn't worried about hitting a ceiling or facing a bottleneck. My potential was higher than anyone in this room could possibly imagine. I didn't need to worry about the future. I just needed more sunlight.